Getting ready for bed at a regular time is one of the most important habits you can learn.
Who you gonna call?
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Oh, Lori, scared another one away.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Sorry, Jack. Chucky's back.
We are counselors at Hackett's Quarry Summer Camp. There is a swarm of bears.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
Most people are so ungrateful to be alive, but not you.
It's showtime.
Hello, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Scream Stream. Now, today's episode is a very special episode. Not only is it one of my favorite horror shows to talk about and watch repeatedly, I'm not gonna lie, I watch the show repeatedly, but it is also just one of the greater Netflix shows, to be honest. Like, Netflix, if you think about it, Netflix really doesn't have a lot of good shows. If you think about it in some aspects, because of the fact that they start like so many shows, like 1, 2 seasons, and then fucking cancel it. And any good show, they just never seem to keep. But this particular show, unfortunately, it was one of the shows that got canceled after season 2. But the interesting factor about the show is it's an anthology series. So luckily we have the complete first season, and it's the first season we are talking about. But today's episode, we are talking about The Haunting of Hill House, which I have to say, yet again, by far one of my favorite horror TV shows out there. It has the best combination of writing, camera work, lighting, acting, just you name it, it's a par on this show. But let's dive on to a little fun facts before we dive straight onto the show. Real quick though, guys, we are going to be talking about specifically episode 1 through 5 today. All spoilers also. All spoilers. I can't explain the show without going into some spoilers. So spoilers, if you've never seen the show, I highly recommend you not watching or listening to this podcast. And if you have seen the show, we're only talking about the first 5 episodes. Next week, we will continue on with episodes 6 through 10. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the episodes or anything like that. Trust me, 6 through 10 are some fiery-ass episodes, especially episode 6. 6 has got to be, like, hands down my favorite episode of the 10. But we'll get there when we get there. But let's start off with some little fun facts. Of course, The Haunting of Hill House came out on Netflix in October of 2018. It is based on the Shirley Jackson book from 1959. It has a lot of... It's a retelling. It's a retelling for sure. But it has a lot of more like nods and names and connections from the book than it actually has an actual faithful adaptation, which I don't have a problem with, because we've had some good adaptations of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, which again goes to the original movie that came out in 1963 that had basically a complete recreation of the book, which was really good. But this show takes its own liberties and does its own thing with the material, and I can appreciate that, especially the fact that it kept the spirit and the basic premise of the book. The only thing they changed around was like some names and like certain things basically, but it wasn't like they dramatically changed to the point that you don't know what the hell you're watching. But I can say something funny about this show. When it first came out, of course, you know, everybody was talking like mad shit about the show, just like, oh my god, it's so scary, it's this and that. So my ass decided to straight up binge watch this show. But I wasn't planning on binge watching this show. I didn't even know anything about this show. All I got told was it's a scary show. So I watched the first, I think it was like the first 2 episodes. I was really like hooked on into it. And by episode 5, I was sold. I was hooked. I was calling my buddy Andrew just like, hey man, I got a show for us to watch. I finished that show all in one night. And my thing was that cracks me up is that I had no clue while watching this show the first time, or at least for the first few episodes. Or it might have been just the first episode, I'm not sure. But the point is, I didn't know going into the show it was based off of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. I just thought it was conveniently a name they picked out. Because, I mean, hell, I've seen a lot of movies, especially on, like, Amazon, where it's like, The Haunting of insert random name of street and or building here. So I didn't think much of it, you know, The Haunting of Hill House. And then I think it was, actually, might have been somewhere in episode 1. We'll get there when we get there. But it's when Mrs. Dudley's talking to Stephen, I think, and she goes, she says the famous line, you know, no one will come anywhere nearer than town, no one will come any farther than this, in the night, in the dark. As soon as she said that line, I was like, son of a bitch, I know this shit, And then, of course, I call all the names, you know, Mrs. Dudley, and I was like, oh my fucking God, I'm just an idiot. But yeah, no, going into it, had no clue. Finding out that it was based off of Shirley Jackson's book just made it 10 times better for me, because I am a sucker for Shirley Jackson. I've actually read the book. I've actually listened to the book. It's actually a really good horror book from the 60s. I thoroughly enjoy it, and if you haven't got a chance, not 60s, 50s, my bad. It's a good book from the 50s, but if you get a chance, though, read it. Listen to it. I think I listened to it on YouTube a few months back. It's about 10 hours or so. And you can, of course, pause and come back to it at any point. But I do recommend at least reading and or listening to the book, because it's a really good book. And it's going to leave you a little bit of, chills down your spine, especially the person who I had reading the book to me on YouTube. It wasn't anybody famous or anything, but whoever was reading it did a good job of really setting the mood. I'm not going to lie. But besides being based on Shirley Jackson's book, it is created by Mike Flanagan, who we all know Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan is a fucking genius writer. He wrote Oculus, Hush, Ouija origin stories, the good Ouija movie, by the way, the good one, not the shitty first one, but the actual prequel. He wrote that one. Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep, which, by the way, you will see a lot of these actors when I get to the casting list that were all in either Oculus, Hush, was definitely Ouija Origins, and Dr. Sleep. You'll see several names, especially spread out throughout out all those different movies that he has worked with. I mean, I guess once you find your crew you like, you work together. And I see that with a lot of directors and writers and fucking lighting crew, actors, musicians. Just once you get that crew that you know and you really like working with, you kind of just keep working with them throughout the entire rest of the project you're doing. And any future projects, basically. Which I like that, because it shows some kind of at least familiar bond that the director and writer has with these actors, so he's not just thrust into something new. Like, they all know each other, they're all familiar with each other, and they're familiar with each other's work, so they know, what the fuck's up. Let's see, some more little fun facts. Sorry, my notes yet again. Trying to organize a TV show has been a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a pain. I got 12 pages of notes just for the first 5 episodes. One of them's a page for fun facts. One of them's a page of the fucking family tree. I'll get to the family tree in a minute. But, it's just, some fun facts that you probably heard, theories and shit is, first of all, of course, all the hidden ghosts. We all seen them. I think somebody roughly guesstimated there's over 40 ghosts, maybe a little under. I'm gonna be honest, going through my 4th, 5th playthrough. I don't even know what playthrough this is of me watching this damn show. But the point is, going through, I still can't find some of these ghosts, and I have scanned each and every frame as possible, as much as I can. And I still miss these ghosts, and it's not someone pauses it, zooms in, and it's just here it is, right here, and I'm just oh. Well, I'm just blind. But the hidden ghosts are all over this show. Like, no matter what. And the camera doesn't draw you to these hidden ghosts, which is actually kind of cool. That the fact that we all know this house is haunted and we see these spectrums, but the camera doesn't make a big fucking deal about it. The writer knows that we're more focusing on what's going on in front of us, not the action behind us. But the action behind us adds a lot more detail, especially about this damn house. Because this house, even though it's episode 5, I really don't know how to describe this house besides it's hungry. It's just fucking hungry. It's not even evil, it's just hungry. And then again, I'll get there when I get there. But basically all the ghosts, though, they have their own individual backstories. Like, all 100% individual backstories. Apparently one of the writers of the show has gone on Reddit to give each and every character their own individual backstory. And I like that. You know, they're not just some random fucktard ghosts that are just hanging around. Like, each ghost has a purpose to be there and a reason to be there. And I personally like that, you know, and it just shows you how creative the show is, to be perfectly honest. It shows you how creative the show is and how they immaculate this entire show in itself. Because, like I said, the writing's great, the fucking acting's all on par, but everything ties in together. Another little fun fact is, of course, we all know who's in this TV show, who plays the younger version of Hugh Crane, or Henry Crane, who is Henry Thomas. And we all know Henry Thomas played Elliot in E.T. Now, a little Easter egg I didn't even catch. It wasn't until I was looking up some fun facts about the show that apparently there's an E.T. lunchbox in the first episode. If you're looking, I think it's when Steven goes to see Luke in his treehouse, and I have air quotes around that, and I'll explain that in a bit. And for those who know what I'm talking about, y'all get what the hell I'm talking about when I use my air quotes. But the point is, while they're in the treehouse, if you look on the ground next to Luke while he's drawing a picture, you'll notice the little E.T. lunchbox right there. And I thought that was actually pretty cool. And another little tidbit just in this scene alone, it's the picture Luke is drawing is a picture of, I guess, the future bullshit that's going to happen in the show. And what I mean by that is he's drawing a picture of a woman, basically, in a pink dress who's screaming with dead eyes. And, you know, when you first watch the episode, you're not going to really get it. It's not until episode 5 that it kind of makes a little bit of sense, and I will get there when we get there. Of course, the thing that's actually been confirmed by the writer of the show, Mike, and everybody else, that I guess basically the children stand for the 5 stages of grief, which was a running theory for the longest time, and then has actually been confirmed by the director. But it's basically Steven is the form of denial. He's always denying everything, denying the existence of ghosts, of everything that's happening in the house. He just denies everything. You got Shirley, who is anger, and she is constantly fucking picking fights. And I noticed, and I think it's part of her control status that she has, because she's very controlling. She's very controlling in nature. And I think when she doesn't have that sense of control, she loses all focus and she gets angry and shit. And you see that a lot, especially in episode 6. You got Theo, who's the bargainer. She is always trying to find an out. She's always trying to find something out. She's always like, it's mainly because of her power. She has the touch of sense. The touch of sense, basically, where she can sense and feel and know what the hell's going on by just touching people and things. And it's, oh god, what's it called? They used it in Rose Red for the second part of the show when they were first walking in the house. The woman touched the doorknob and felt Tsukina. But yeah, she's the bargainer. She's always just trying to have a way out of the situation. Luke, of course, is depression, and we see that a hell of a lot, especially during Luke's episode. And Nellie is acceptance. She accepts the bullshit that happens at the house. She accepts her family at the end. And I don't think neither Hugh or Olivia really has anything to do with the stages of grief. But yeah, according to a lot of fan theories and also Mike, that's basically what the children stand for. And I actually like that. It adds a interesting depth to the characters because of the fact that each one is, yeah, of course, representing the stages of grief, but you can see how each one is handling their grief in a different aspect. It's like, with Steve, like I said, he's denial. And his whole point, even all the way to the fucking end of the show, is just like, I don't believe this shit. I really don't believe this shit. It's not until him and his father have a conversation, and he kind of like, not grabs him because they're in the car driving, but he eventually tells him, son, you've seen ghosts, all right? You've been affected by this house. And it's not until, I think it's like episode 9. Like, I think it's episode 9. That's when he actually accepts the fact that maybe there was more to all this bullshit than what he originally thought. With Shirley, with her anger bullshit, you see she gets depressed. You see she feels the sadness and the loneliness, especially after she gets to basically embalm her own sister. And so you kind of just see in every character, they're not just this, they're not just, Steve's just not denial, fucking Shirley's not just anger. There's more to them, but that's the biggest part of their characters and themselves, is that they are these stages of grief. But like I said, I like that aspect. I like the writing choices in that, and to be frank, I really expect much when it comes to fucking Mike's, I couldn't think of his name for a second, Mike Flanagan's writing abilities. Because homie knows how to write. Like, he knows how to write characters. He doesn't just write basic bitch characters. He actually thinks about these characters, writes stories about these characters. Even though the story and the information ain't in the movie, he knows this shit. And that's actually a key to good writing, is that you could write a character, but if you have like all this amazing backstories and you feel for this character and you understand this character, it really adds a passion to your writing. And you can tell that with Mike. Mike is very passionate about his writing, and he's very good at it too. But let's go down to the cast and crew of the show. Mainly, we're going to be talking about a lot of the actors, mainly a lot of the adult actors. I couldn't find much on the kid actors of the show, but there was some stuff. We have Michael, again, guys, I'm dyslexic as hell, yet again, I will say it, if I butcher anybody's name, my fucking bad. Like, dead serious, my fucking bad. Michael Hushman, who plays Stephen Crane, which is the eldest son. He, funny enough, was in The Invitation. He played David, and he was also in World War Z with Brad Pitt. He played Ellis. Didn't know that. It took me a minute to actually recognize his face. But yeah, apparently he's Ellis. We have Paxton Singleton? I don't know, I kind of fucked up his last name. When writing last night, I was like all over the place because I was like up and down my bed and shit. But Paxton, he plays the younger version of Steve. You have Carla Juneau? I'm not even gonna attempt to. God, I feel so bad because I love this actress. She plays Olivia, which we all know this woman from a lot of fuck shit. Not only is she in Dr. Sleep, she's also in The Unborn, Gerald's Game, Watchmen, The Lookout, Spy Kids as well. She's a wonderful actress and a wonderful horror actress to boot. You also got Timothy Houghton, who plays the older version of Henry. Didn't really find too terribly much on him, but of course we know Henry Thompson, who plays the younger version of Hugh. He plays, of course, Alien E.T., and he's also Jack Torrance in Dr. Sleep, because they couldn't get Jack Nicholson in for it for some reason. I can't really remember why the reason was, but maybe if I ever talk about The Shining and Dr. Sleep, I'll dig more into that. Here's one I didn't know, and I feel so fucking stupid for not realizing this. It wasn't literally till about like 3 hours ago I realized this shit. Elizabeth Reeser, who plays Shirley. Not only is she in the movie Stay, that I just fucking absolutely love because it's got Hugh McGregor in it, she plays Esme from Twilight. She plays the mom of all the vampire kids in Twilight, and I can't believe I fucking missed this. And I've been watching the show since 2018 and didn't even realize this until fucking now. Then you have Lulu Wilson, who played her kid counterpart. You got Oliver Jackson, who played Luke Crane. He was in The Raven, of course, in The Invisible Man. He played the protagonist in that. No, not protagonist, antagonist. Whoops. I dropped me pin again. But he plays the antagonist in The Invisible Man. And I don't know if a lot of people remember this show. I kind of forgot about this show until I was looking it up. And it's because it's been so long since I even thought about this show. Emerald City. I don't know if people remember that show. It was a weird, twisty version of Wizard of Oz, if I remember. It's like a modern take on it. It was really weird. I didn't finish it. I remember I didn't finish it. Because I want to say it got canceled or some bullshit. I don't know. But yeah, he was in Emerald City. Julian Hildar played the younger version of Luke. Kate Siegel, of course, played Theo Crane, who's the middle daughter. She was in Oculus, Hush, and in Origin of Evils. She was also played by McKinnon Grays, the younger version of Theo, anyways. She was actually in a couple episodes of Fuller House. Did not know that, but only watched, I think, like half the season of Fuller House before I was just like, I can't with this show. Like, nothing personal about the show, but I just couldn't with the show. And then we have Victoria Petrit, who plays Nail. Of course, she played Danny in Bly Manor. And her younger version, Violet McGraw, I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's actually in that new movie that just came out, Megan. Apparently, she plays Caddy. To be honest, I really don't know. I haven't seen the movie yet. I want to, but I haven't seen it yet. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Apparently, I'm having a little bit of some bitrate issues. Hang on 1 second, guys. There we go. Pull the chat up this way. Alright, sorry about that. Apparently I had something going on in the background that was upsetting my bit rate. Didn't even realize that. But yeah, I haven't seen Megan, so I really couldn't tell you much about this young child actress. But yeah, we got a lot of good names, a lot of good actors in this show. To be frank, the only other characters I could probably talk about, because I mean, there's a lot of ghosts. Like you got Poppy, Mr. Hill, other fine actors who play these ghosts. But I think the only other main important characters we could talk about would be the Dudleys, which is played by Annabeth and Robert Longstreet, who I didn't find any kind of information on. But yeah, they play the Dudleys. They're important characters, and yeah, no, that's about it for all the fun facts and shit. Real quick though, just a little help you figure out the fucking relations to these people, because me and my roommate were debating for what was it, like 2 hours about how everybody was related in the Hill family. So you got Jacob Hill and Faya, who is the main household ownerships, Mr. Hill, and together they made Hazel Hill and William Hill. Now Hazel Hill, we see throughout the show as an older ghost. Mainly we see her in the sick room and shit, especially with Luke and the little phone thingy. Shit, I don't even know what it's called, but it's basically like a little phone that's from like her sick room all the way down to the fucking kitchen. And William Hill, of course, is the tall, brooding ghost we see with the cane and the bowler hat. I don't know much on Hazel's husband. They didn't really go too in detail about him, but she gave birth to Jacqueline Hill and Edward Hill. Rumor has it Edward Hill is the ghost Luke sees in the cellar when Theo puts him in the dumbwaiter and it goes down. And of course, Jacqueline Hill, of course, Jacqueline's Cups of Stars. Now, this is where it gets the good ghosts come in at. William Hill married Poppy Walters, who became Poppy Hill, and Poppy is one of the main antagonists of the show. She basically convinces Olivia the only way to keep her children safe is by killing them. And she's a fucking ghost, and so she killed her own children, which we see them as well, which is Eugene Hill and I didn't catch this kid's name. I don't think I found any information on this kid, but we do see him, and he is the little boy in the wheelchair who can't really speak or move or anything. Now, also, rumor has it, I don't know how true this is, I haven't delved too much in this information, but rumor has it, Mr. Dudley, Mr. Dudley, he apparently might be an offspring of William Hill. Apparently he might have had an affair with a maid, and this is where Mr. Dudley comes in at. I don't know. Again, you hear me say apparently a lot because I haven't really looked too much into these details. But yeah, that's basically the Hill family tree. A lot of them are just very, very confusing if you, because I originally thought for a while that Mr. Hill was William Hill. You know, I thought he was the head household guy. No, apparently his name is Jacob Hill. Completely wrong about that. And before we dive on into the episodes, let me talk about something real quick. Something I noticed in the opening titles. So, when the show, you know, after we have, for the first 4 episodes, we always have a little tidbit, then the credits, then the opener. Which, changes, I think, after episode 5. I know episode 5 opened completely different compared to the others. But the opening credits, when we see basically the statues and they're falling apart, you know, they're supposed to represent the decayingness of the house, you know, how it's supposed to be dead and just kind of in ruins. And funny enough, they actually talk about the house, I want to say in episode 5 with Nellie, when she's talking to her doctor, and they describe the house as a dead carcass. So in some aspects, when we see the opening, we see like these beautiful statues, and they're all like just like shattering into fucking ash, and there's like chips of them falling out, and they're cracking and stuff. It kind of represents the house in itself, and of course the madness in the house with all the statues kind of screaming. Like none of them have pleasant, happy faces. They're all just screaming in agonizing terror. And then we move to a little thing that I didn't really notice until like this last watch through of the show. But we go from the statues to the statues pulling away from the statues inside the house, and the house represents itself as a maze. And that's interesting because as you watch the show, you realize that the structure of the house, at least in the inside, doesn't make sense logically. Like, it really doesn't. I literally had to pause several different times throughout the movie to count how many windows and floors I see. From the front of the house, I think it's 2 stories, plus an attic and a basement. And then the back of the house almost looks like 3 stories. But I want to say it's 2 stories, an attic, and a basement. I don't really know how many rooms, though. I didn't sit there and count that now. But, of course, you know, like I said, we go to the maze, and it kind of represents the craziness of this house, that it just doesn't make any sense, that it's constantly changing, it's constantly moving its walls around, fucking with your mind, fucking with your head. And then of course we pull through from the opening credits through the doorknob of the red door, which is actually a big key important thing in this entire show. You wouldn't think a red door would be that important, but the red door is important, and so is the color red. Lots of red shit. I'm not gonna lie, there's more red shit in here than I realize, and I'll dive more into that as we go on through the episodes. And something else I noticed about the episodes too is that the titles of each episode represents not only what is going on in the episode, but actually represents an overarching narrative of the characters themselves, about certain aspects of the characters, such as this first episode, it's titled Steven Sees a Ghost. Throughout this entire first episode, Steven keeps insisting he has never seen a ghost a day in his life. He's just like, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I've never seen a ghost, even though I was in a haunted house, even though I write these horror stories, I've never seen a ghost. But at the end of the last episode, boom, he sees the fucking ghost for the first time. So, and each episode is like that. Of course, you got Steven Sees the Ghost, the open casket, you have Touch, the twin thing, and the Bentnet lady. Now, and like I said, each episode kind of not only dives into I think it's just the first 5 kids. Yeah, it's just the first 5 episodes about all the 5 kids. We don't get Olivia and Hugh's version of the story until I think episodes 8 and 9. Or it could be 7, 8, and 9. I could be wrong though. Again, I'm still trying to catch up on the show. I kind of fucked myself, to be perfectly honest. I should have watched this all during the weekend, but I got caught up doing some other stuff and things and stuff. And I've been ended up binge watching the first 5 episodes this week. Which again, I don't mind because I like the show. But yeah, so I haven't been watching too much forward. I'll start doing that tonight after this podcast to get more prepared for the next 5 episodes. But let's just go ahead and dive straight on in. And as I go on through over the episodes and what's going on in these episodes, a lot more stuff will make sense, especially with the titles and shit. But let's start off with episode 1, Steven Sees a Ghost. Now, what's interesting about this episode is a lot of shit happens in this episode that we keep coming back to throughout the rest of the 4 episodes that follow. Basically, I think the most important nights we keep coming back to is the last night at the house, which is when Hugh grabbed the kids and fled the house in dramatic fashion. And the first night of the house, where Nellie has a nightmare about the Bentnet lady. And that's basically where we come in at. We had the Steve's monologue. It's from the book about, I'm trying to think of how he worded it. Something about nothing but brick and stone, and those who walk alone in the hallways, or something like that. He's basically setting up this entire setup of the house, talking about just the creepiness of this house. And as he's going through this monologue, we're panning over the inside, the outside, different rooms and shit of the house, and kind of getting a sense of this house. Because this house in itself is a character. It's its own fucking character, because the way they talk about this house, especially the way Olivia talks about the house, just houses in general, about how them being living organisms, a house has a heart, a brain, places that families can spend time together in, places where family need to be separated, shit like that. They talk about it like it's a living organism that just needs to feed. And that's actually the best way I can describe this house. Like, it's not evil. This house is not evil. I want to say the house may not have necessarily always been like this, because I want to say Steven points out to Mrs. Dudley that they found, Ouija boards and tarot cards while they were cleaning out. So it could be that they might have drawn something into this house to, I guess, make it hungry or something. The house is very confusing. I know in the book they describe it as its own being, like it looks at you, it watches you. And that's really the best way I can see it through this TV show as well, is that it's just its own fucking being. that's just hungry and wants to fucking eat and is not satisfied until it eats everything it fucking wants. Because it's a greedy little fucking house. Anyway, like I said, we open up with Steve's monologue. We're panning through the house. We see this enormous, dusty ruin, like it's covered in fucking vines and shit. It doesn't look good. The house does not look good. It looks in ruins. But, no, wait. I think this time it actually looks alright. There's so many times in the show where we keep coming back and forth between the past and the present. It's so hard to keep track if I don't write then and now and what particular year it is. Again, these notes are fucking confusing. Even though I wrote them, they're very confusing. But we pan through the house, and we get startled by Nellie crying, and Steve gets up, who's the older brother, and this scene right here basically kind of gives you a sense of all the characters. It doesn't like delve into all the characters, it doesn't hold your hand, but you are introduced to each of these characters. And you learn just a little bit about them, just a little bit. With Steve, you learn, of course, he's the bigger brother, loving brother who loves his, especially his two younger siblings. You learn a little bit about Nellie and Luke's twin thing, I don't think it's been scientifically proven, but people have said, especially with twins, they can feel each other's pain, they can feel each other's emotions, and they can feel a lot of things between each other, and it's a twin thing. Now, there's no scientific evidence to back this shit up, but I've heard enough stories from twins to kind of conclude that maybe the twin thing is a thing. But but when Steve goes to check on Nellie, like I said, she's crying, and she had a nightmare about the BitNet lady, and Luke is up because Nellie's up, it's a twin thing. I'm up because she's up. Hugh comes in, and of course, he's being the best dad he can be. Just, your big brother scared her away, there's nothing to worry about. And she's just like, but what if she comes back? Don't worry about it. We're here to protect you. He sends Steve to bed, puts all the kids down, decides to go check on everybody else. We saw Theo for like half a millisecond in the hallway when Steve walked by to go to Nellie's room. And she's like, do you want me to wake Mom and Dad? Nah, I got this. It's Shirley, though. I love Shirley's intro. So, Dad goes, like I said, to check on everybody. And he opens Shirley's door, and she's mumbling about dancing in the red room. And he just looks over and he's just like, Shirley, you're sleeping. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. The pandas don't like macaroni. Noted. And he closes the door. And of course, as he's about to leave, he notices that the twins' bedroom door is back open after he closes it. So he closes it, kind of examines the door a little bit, and then heads on back. And he crawls in the bed with Olivia. And of course, they talk about the fucking panda joke. She's like, well, how are the troops? Oh, they're good. Nellie had a nightmare. Steve was there to help. Shirley's dreaming about pandas, not liking macaroni. Overall, not a bad night. But then we cut back to Nellie sleeping in her bed, or trying to get comfortable. And she's facing the camera, and right up behind her, she doesn't see it, but we as the audience do. She comes, the BitNet lady slowly comes, like, sliding forward towards the camera right behind Nellie. And that's kind of like our first look at the BitNet lady. To kind of give us a hint, Nellie isn't dreaming. Nellie isn't making shit up. She actually is seeing something, and we just saw that something she sees. So once we get done that, we cut back to present time at that moment. Again, this timeline shit's gonna get very, very confusing, guys. I'm not even gonna lie. There's a lot of back and forth jumps between the past and present. And it ain't just the past of when there were kids. No, we have, I think, 6 years ago, 2 years prior before that. Because there's a lot of shit that goes on in this show, especially between the kids. There's a lot of shit, a lot of drama that happens, and they make sure we know every fucking aspect of it. So again, there's a lot of cutting back and forth. So I'm gonna say now, we're gonna come back to now Steven, which is Steven starting at the current age we see him as an adult in this show. And we find out Steven, he is a horror writer. Kind of like, what's his name from 1408, John Cusack's character. He basically just investigates these haunted areas, and he writes what he sees. But the thing is, he doesn't believe in what he sees. Steve is very logical. Steve is extremely logical. Steve has denounced, and again, being the stages of grief, being denial, he denies any existence of ghosts. Even though he's seen shit, and he doesn't realize it, he still denies this shit. And he even tells this to the woman that he's doing a bit of a interview with, because you find out through the story of the woman, he's there investigating a sad situation, basically, where she lost her husband in a terrible car wreck, and she's haunted by her husband. And basically, it was like one night she was sleeping, and she woke up and she swears to God she saw her husband just hanging there on the ceiling, and it freaked her out. So thus she called Steve. You know, they come investigating shit. And what makes the story very, very tragic about the woman's husband is the fact that he kind of suffered a little bit. After the car wreck, he was kind of stuck upside down, so all the blood pulled to his head, and he basically died that way. He couldn't really fuck with the horn too much because his arm was broken, but he was able to hit it for a little bit and then had to back up. He didn't back it up, and nobody heard this man. So he died a very painful death, and she's traumatized by that, by the whole situation. And I don't blame her. I mean, you find out your husband died in such a horrible way, that would haunt me too. That definitely would haunt me too. But you know, while they're talking, of course, you know, he finds out, you know, she and her husband were fans, and you know, he's going to do his justice. And then she asks, well, do you talk to your siblings? Because he brings out a copy of Hill House that she has on the bookshelf, and this is why she asks, hey, you know, have you talked to any of your siblings? He gets a phone call from Nellie, and of course, you know, he's busy, you know, taking notes and stuff about, you know, all the situation, so he ignores the phone call. We then go back to the past where we see Nellie on the sofa. Now, this is actually an important scene because we come back to this several times. I want to say at least 2 more times. 1 for sure. In episode 5, we come back to this scene, but it might be 2 times. But we go to a scene where Nellie, you know, after the nightmare with the bit-net lady, is sleeping on a sofa. Her mom is down on the floor, she's passed out, and at some point in the night, Mom wakes up, sees that Nellie's fine, and decides to leave her. Now, as soon as she leaves, of course, every dickhead ghost out there always has to traumatize children this way. You know, fuck these dickhead ghosts. But as soon as her mom leaves, she awakens and she's got sleep paralysis. So she's stuck staring at this figure that's above her, and it freaks her out. But she can't do anything because she's got sleep paralysis. So all she can do is, you know, heavy breathing. That's all she can do. See, then we cut back to the present, and then Nellie's calling Shirley, which Shirley ignores her phone call as well because Shirley's also working. This is where you learn a little bit about Shirley. This is our introduction, a proper introduction to Shirley, at least adult Shirley anyways. You find out she is a funeral director, and at the moment she is talking to a kid who is just traumatized to the point that he does not want to see his grandma open casket. Cause that's the whole thing, is that everybody wants to have an open casket but this kid, because he's freaked out by her. Apparently she comes and visits him at night and it freaks him out. And I think we dove more into this, I think in the second episode, about the little boy, but yeah, no, he just does not want to have this open casket. So she's trying to communicate to him about, hey, you know, it's good to have an open casket. You know, we can do this and fix her up so she's not as creepy, and you can at least say goodbye. And he's just like, nah, I don't want this shit. Nah, I don't want to see Grandma. She sees me every night. So, while she's trying to deal with the situation, and, you know, the couple leaves with their kids and stuff, she's talking, Shirley's talking to her husband about everything. And she's listening to the voicemail that was left by Nellie. And Nellie's voicemail is basically saying, hey, this sounds weird, but I had a bad feeling about Luke. Can you call and at least check on Luke? Like, I'm worried about Luke. And we'll find out in episode 5 why she's so worried about Luke. But while she's listening to the voicemail, and her husband is hanging up this picture he has of the funeral home, you know, with her and him and the fucking kids. Because it's a family business, apparently. It's a family fucking business. But while he's hammering, she has a bit of a flashback to when Mr. Dudley and Hugh were working on the flute. Now, here's something interesting. I actually found not found out, but something interesting I found out about this particular room. If you look at the details of the room, it is very, 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 like, to the point of looking just like a room that was in the book and the original movie, with all the gothic details and stuff, with the creepy little statue figurine that are heads on the fireplace, how do I describe the wall, kind of like thorns and shit. It's very gothic, very like old school gothic. The best like imagery I can give you is if you've seen the 1999 version, which by the way, God bless you if you have. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad movie, but it's a fun movie to watch when you're drunk as shit. Let me just put it that way. But the rooms in the 1999 version of the Haunting of Hill House look just like this room in this particular episode. And I actually like that because the gothic style of the house really didn't really shine too terribly much in the house, which I have to say. Even though the house is its own character in itself, but there was not a lot of gothic-like style rooms. Like, there were a lot of interesting rooms, don't get me wrong. Like, the fucking kitchen is sweet as hell. The living room is badass. That garden in the back, gorgeous as hell. But, you know, there's not a lot of these, like, gothic-style rooms. But, again, they're trying to remodel it and remake it, so we probably didn't get to see them tear half this shit down. But they're working on the old flu, and Shirley asks, you know, hey, do you have that master key we're looking for? Because Mr. Dudley, not Mr. Dudley, because Hugh and them can't get into a certain room in the house, which has a red door, which, wink, wink, the important red door. Because they can't get into it, they're hoping that maybe this master key that Mr. Dudley has can get them in there. So she takes the key from Mr. Dudley, runs all the way up there. And there's Nellie and her trying to open this damn door, and it's not working. It's not working. Like, this key's just not fitting. It's not turning. It's so bullshit. It's not even funny. But the little girl, she's so cute. Oh, little Nellie. She's over there like, what if it's a cotton candy machine? What if it's a pony? You know, I saw something move underneath the door shadow. You know, I saw a shadow move underneath the door. Like, what if it's... And, you know, of course, Shirley being reasonable is like, if it's the pony, he's probably dead. Like, nobody's been in those rooms since we moved in. And, of course, you know, it doesn't work. So they stand up, go, okay, well, I guess we'll try another key, and then leave the door. We pan on the door for a second, and we as the audience, see something move underneath the doorway, or the door frame. We see that shadow that Nellie was talking about. Now, this particular scene actually loops back to Theo's episode, and I'll get there when I get there, but you notice a lot of key scenes or key moments that happen in this first episode. We will loop back to them in later episodes. So after the red door thing, we cut back to Stephen and Shirley on the phone talking about Nellie, about the situation. You know, he's like, hey, listen, I called. Luke's doing great. You know, he's got his 90-day chip and all that shit. But you'll notice on the phone call, Shirley and Stephen don't get along. She's very, very short with Stephen. she actually badmouths Steven and goes, oh, you're supposed to be the older sibling. You should have this under control. But I guess I can take care of it because, you know, that's all I do is clean out after everybody else's mess. And you kind of get that sense of control factor from this bitch. Like, she's fucking just hands around throats. Just she is choking the life out of poor Steven, and Steven just taking it on the cheek. But you could tell they did not have the bestest relationship. And she ends up just hanging up the phone. So Steven calls Nellie and leaves a voicemail. And at the same time he's leaving the voicemail, we cut to Nellie coming in from... we find out that she's at a motel. But she's coming into the room and she is like out of breath. Like just... you know, she's like freaking out. Like she saw something. Which she did. But we don't know this until episode 5. So, once, you know, he tells, you know, Nellie about, you know, how good Luke is doing about his 90-day chip and all this shit. We then cut to the intro to one of my favorite people of this whole show. Oh, Theo. Theo. Like, I even loved you when Catherine Zeta-Jones played you in the 1999 version. I loved you in the original 63 version. But you, my dear, beautiful woman, you are just drop dead, badass, gorgeous in this fucking show. I will say to the fucking cows come home, she is wonderful. So let's talk about Theo real quick. Besides that, she's a badass. She has the powers of touch, which I discussed earlier in the podcast. And not only does she have the power of touch, but she has the power to seduce other women. Like, I don't know, she's like a frat guy. I think even, her fucking sister makes a joke about it, calling her a fucking frat guy, because she can just pick up women like there's no tomorrow. And she picks up gorgeous women, too, so oh, goddamn. So, during this, you know, introduction of Theo, we meet her at a club, and she's talking to this very gorgeous Asian woman. And, they're flirting and shit, and they go back to her house for some intimate time. And I noticed something after the intimate time when she's kind of laying up next to the girl she picked up. She won't touch her, like physically. Like if you notice her, she is like kind of got her hand cupped underneath her chin, you know, just like away from her. She won't touch her just because of her fucking ability. She won't touch her. But I like that as a small character development that the actress chose to do while filming this scene, and it adds a lot more complexity to the character. Let's see, and once she unfortunately gets done and they talk a little bit, they try to have a bit of a small talk. Theo's not interested though. She's looking for a booty call. The other girl not so much. And she basically kind of kicks her out like a frat guy. Just so I got work in the morning. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. You know, me too. Very early in the morning. Oh, well, I guess I'll see myself out. That kind of thing. She's that kind of frat guy. Hang on one second. So my roommate's dog's whining, and she decides to whine in here. We got 5 other rooms in this house, and she chooses my den to whine in because Andrew stepped out of the house for a minute. Anyway, I digress. So, once she kicks her out, and she goes outside. She's talking to her sister Shirley about the situation. And that's when, you know, Shirley makes that crack about her being a frat guy. She's like, you were like a guy. Actually, you're worse than a guy. You're a fucking frat guy. And while they're talking about that, though, they talk about Nellie and bring up the fact that Nellie's called everybody except for Theo, and it's because Theo's not talking to Nellie. They had an incident, which will be explained more in episode 5, where they're no longer communicating with each other or speaking to each other because of the incident. And she's like, all I want is a fucking apology from her. Once I get an apology, I'll continue talking to her. But after that, Shirley just kind of like informs her that, you know, we just kind of don't hold on to it, but it's Theo. She's gonna hold on to it anyway. But you'll notice though during the whole conversation is that Theo puts up walls, and I think she even talks about it in her episode about when she was a kid. She puts up walls. She puts up walls for the girls she brought over. She kind of puts up walls against Nellie about the situation. She puts up walls against Shirley, and it's basically to keep her own mentality safe because of her ability to touch and shit. Especially with her job line more, which we'll get into that in episode 3. But they talk about, keeping an eye on Luke. Luke will eventually come around. Luke always comes around, especially when he wants money. So they're always expecting him. But what's new about Luke? And then once we get done with that kind of nice sentimental moment, we cut over to Hugh. And this is our first introduction of Hugh for the first time since we saw him in the opening. And he's having a weird dream about his wife. He's literally laying in bed, and he feels Olivia kind of holding and, cuddling, snuggling him or something. And hang on one more second. Sorry. Again, Athena decides to whine right here. Like, literally, she set her ass down right in front of my chair and continued the whine. It's just like, what do you want me to do? I can't make Andrew come back home. He's left to go get food. Let the man eat, Athena. And now we see Ares. Anyway, like I was saying, Hugh's having a nightmare about his wife, and he wakes up after he turns over, and she kind of screams at him. He darts up, and he has this phone call from Nellie. And Nellie is proceeded to tell him that she's been having nightmares about the BitNet lady again. And this kind of freaks him out. Like, he literally, shots up, goes into Big Daddy mode. And proceeds to tell Nellie, listen, go see your brother. Stay there. I'll come over there as quickly as I can. Don't worry about it. Just don't do anything stupid. And she's like, Daddy, I'm not going to do anything. I'm sorry to wake you. I'm having a tough time with everything. I love you, Daddy. And she hangs up. Plot twist. Nellie's not even at her house either. Nellie is back at the fucking house. She is literally looking at the house. And we see the house light up. And she's just drawn to this house. She's just drawn to it. And you can see... it's kind of fucked up with the house, but the front porch light flicks on twice, and that's something her mother did to kind of tell them, hey, come on home, kids. I think we, especially we 90 kids and 80s kids, we all know the rule about the front porch light, which when it flicks twice, you come home. Nowadays, kids, I don't know. Y'all got cell phones, so mom and dad can just text you like, do you know what fucking time it is? Get your ass home. Back then, though, you didn't have that luxury. But, once, we see that situation of Nellie walking towards the house, we cut back to that night, which is the final night when Hugh grabbed the kids and left. Hugh comes in and wakes Steven up and tells him that he needs to close his eyes and that they're just going to run. They're just going to run because something's going on. But before they can step out of the room, Hugh closes the door and locks it, and both him and Steven kind of back up a little bit. Now, I want to say there's a hidden ghost in this scene right here behind one of them, near the back of the wall. I did my best trying to find a lot of these hidden ghosts. I did my best, and I don't think it was good enough. My best was not good enough on this. But once they back away, they see that the doorknob slowly turns, and we kind of get a good detail of this doorknob, by the way, which they have a lot of fancy doorknobs. I'm not gonna lie. This house has a lot of fancy doorknobs that I wish I had. Like, seriously, I mean, dead serious. Like, these are some nice-ass doorknobs. But, it turns, and nothing happens, and it goes quiet. So he fucking scoops Steve up, and he's holding him, and he's just like, all right, Steve, keep your eyes closed, don't look, man, just don't look. He opens the door, and he takes off running, and Steve, unfortunately, opens his eyes because he's a kid and doesn't listen, and he sees a figure kind of hobbling, but running at the same time towards him as they're running, And once they get down to the foyer where the big staircase is at, Hugh puts them down. They run out the door, and as they're running out the door, the rest of the kids come out of the car, and they're like, I think Luke is like, I seen Abigail. Fucking Shirley's like, where's Mom? Nobody knows. And during this chaos, you hear the front door slam, and then all the kids pile in. Of course, they back up real quickly and go to drive off, and before they drive off, Steven's in the back seat of the vehicle, and he looks up out the window, and he sees another figure standing there, and he drives off, with all the kids still screaming, where's Mom? Where's Mom? We can't leave Mom. What's going on? And again, we all find out later on, I think it's episode 9. I think it might be episode 9 when we find out the full truth of what happened on that night. But Steven didn't really see much of that night. Let's just put that down in stone. Steven really didn't see much of that night. But Steven wrote the most out of everybody, because Steven wrote a book about this whole situation, about just living in the house in general, because this becomes a big, story. And again, we'll get further into that. But once we hear, them leaving and everything, we cut back to present time, and there's Hugh calling Steven to let him know, hey man, something's up with Nellie. I sent her your direction. It's all gonna be okay. Just, I'm on my way home. And before Steven can tell him he's not at his house either, Hugh hangs up the phone, and Steven's just like, great. Because Steven doesn't even live at his own house. Apparently, Steven and his wife are arguing, which we find out later on why they're arguing. Again, we see a lot of situations where we don't get the full context until episodes later, which I like that, because again, the first 5 episodes just to build up a 2-day event. Yeah, fun fact, everybody. Most of the present time situations of the first 5 episodes all take place within 2 to 3 days of each other. It's all 2-3 days. Past time, that's a different story, because there's at one point we jumped 6 years in the past, and of course we jump back to when they were kids all the fucking time. So that's a different story, but present time, it takes place within 2 to 3 days. But while Hugh, calls, after the phone call, and Steven's just like, I'm not even living at my house anymore. We cut back to Nellie, who's in the house now. And we get a good look at this house. This house is now decaying. It's in ruins. It's got vines and dust everywhere. This place looks like shit. It looks like garbage. I feel like a homeless person would even be like, nah, bro, I ain't planning living in this place. But Nellie's in the house wearing a pink nightgown, and she's in a trance while she's dancing. And we watch her throughout this scene basically dance around like she's dancing with somebody, but we don't see anybody. We just see her in a trance just doing this shit. We'll find out in episode 5 what she actually sees, which, I'm gonna be honest, the house is a dick for it. I'm not gonna lie, the house may not be evil, but the house is a dick. So, once we see a little bit of Nellie dancing and shit, we then cut to everybody waking up at 3:03 a.m. Except for fucking Luke, who wakes up at a different time, but it's equivalent, it matches up to 3:03 a.m. But basically, everybody wakes up gasping and clenching their neck. And I think Shirley's the only one that says anything, because she pops up and goes, Nellie's in the red room. But everybody else just, just clenching themselves, like very confused. Steven does it, fucking Shirley does it, and everyone, I think except for Hugh, because Hugh's fucking traveling at this point. But everybody else wakes up just gasping for air. And I'm trying to figure this note out. It says the woman's ghost was in her head. I'm not quite sure what I meant by that. I'm really not. Anyway, after Shirley wakes up with Nellie in the red room, we then cut back to past time yet again. And it's Shirley, and it's not like the past time. It ain't when they're kids. It's when they're adults. I think this is one of those 6 years prior incidents. But Shirley's talking about the book and about how Steven got nothing right about it, how Steven basically is raping, and her exact words, raping the family, and fucking calling Mom crazy, calling Luke and all of them crazy, how none of it was real and all this shit. And his whole argument back was, well, what else am I supposed to write about? Y'all told me this shit. This is how I view this shit. Dad won't talk about this shit because Hugh doesn't. Hugh apparently, after the night they fled the house, talked to a bunch of tabloid reporters, and then after that refused to talk to anybody ever about the situation, about what happened that night. And that's a big thing, a big plot of not even a plot hole, just a big plot of the show is what happened that night that Hugh's not telling anybody. Because if it was a simple situation, that could be easily explained away, but because it's complicated, he's got to come up with some fuck shit. So, we get this whole argument about how Shirley's just not going to take the money. If it sells, she doesn't want any part of it, that the book's a farce and it fucking sucks, and if anybody takes that blood money, to hell with everybody, and she walks off. Then we cut to further back to when they were children. Let's see. And it's basically where, not the night, but literally like the day after the whole situation. And Hugh's talking to his lawyer about what's going on. And of course, the lawyer throws the tabloid stories all over the table where Steven can read it. And of course, a couple of the title is Haunted House Killed My Wife. And it's literally just like smear articles on Hugh about how he basically is saying the house killed my wife. This house is fucked up. Fuck this house. You just fuck this house. And they're like, well, maybe you can get the kids to take a stand and talk about this, because Hugh's in trouble. By the way, I forgot to mention this. Hugh's in trouble for the whole incident because he's blaming the house for the death of his wife. The court system doesn't look fondly on that, so they want to take the kids out of the care of Hugh. So he's got to go on stand, and if he doesn't win the case, he loses the kids to Aunt Janet, which I really don't know much about Aunt Janet, to be honest. I didn't really like the bitch. From what the kids tell about Aunt Janet, she's a fucking bitch. But once we see all the fucking papers and shit, and they're arguing about whether or not the kids should go on stand, he's just like, no, the tabloids can rip me apart. I don't care. They don't touch the kids, though. No one goes near the kids. Because he knows that this house has really fucked these kids up. He knows this, we know this, everyone but his lawyer in the conversation knows this piece. So, once we get done with having that entire conversation, we then cut back. Okay. Again, guys, all these damn time jumps. We then cut back again after we're having the conversation about, how the tabloids. What's up?
Are you recording or streaming?
I'm streaming. But once we get to the whole, tabloid situation, we cut now to the present time where we find out Steven's not on good terms with his wife. He gives her a phone call to kind of let her know, hey, Nellie's coming over. Hey, my dad's coming over. And she's just like, yeah, no, Steven, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want, because he wants to come over there and talk to her as well. And she's just like, listen, you know what you have to say, and you ain't gonna say it. So why should we even have this conversation? And then hangs the fuck up. But, something I forgot to add about the whole situation with the tabloids is that he made it specifically clear to the lawyer that nobody was supposed to be in the house after all this shit. He ain't gonna sell the house, he ain't gonna burn the house, he ain't gonna do shit with this house. He's gonna stay locked up, and it's gonna sit there and it's gonna rot. And the only people allowed in there are the Dudleys. Everybody else, no reporters, none of the family, nobody else is allowed in this damn house. And unfortunately, they classify Olivia's death, the whole situation, as a suicide. And even the kids believe it was a suicide because, again, Hugh doesn't talk about that situation. But, like I said, we cut back to, you find out about Stephen and his wife not being on good terms. And then we cut back again to the past times. And Mrs. Dudley is telling Stephen about Hill House, about how, Jacob Hill was the owner of the house and how his kids were fucking crazy. Mainly it was William Hill and his daughter-in-law who were fucking crazy because they met in a crazy house. Hazel, she wasn't too bad. Hazel apparently lived a very long life, and Mrs. Dudley actually took care of her when she was dying of old age. Which, good on Mrs. Dudley. Good on Mrs. Dudley for at least being around to see some of this chaos. I actually kind of feel bad for Mrs. Dudley, but we find that out later on. But, she's talking about, Jacob and the family and all that shit. And then Stephen asks her, hey, why don't you live in this house? I mean, there's plenty of rooms, there's plenty of this, there's plenty of that. And she's like, oh, no one will live anywhere nearer than town. No one will come any closer than that. Which we get the iconic line from the original movie and the original book and all that. And hell, even the 1999 version, they had this, the whole In the Night in the Dark story, In the Night in the Dark lines. Which I like that. I really like that this, the whole no one would come any nearer than town, that whole little monologue, it's just creepy. It's just creepy, and it really sets the tone of this fucking house, how everybody feels about this fucking house, and who doesn't even live at the house. Just people don't like this house. But they proceed to talk about how they found the tarot cards and the Ouija boards and all this shit. And of course, Mrs. Dudley kind of confronts Stephen, and she's like, well, if you know what all this shit is, like, do you know the Gospels, young man? Like, do you know this shit to protect you? And of course, Olivia comes in like a boss-ass bitch and like, he knows everything. We taught him religion of all sorts. And her exact words are, we knew people would try to influence our children on what they believe is right, and we wanted them to make their own decisions about it. So they read everything. They read the Quran, they read the Bible, they read, everything, every religious thing. At least Stephen has read it. I don't know about the rest of the kids, but I know Stephen did. And then, of course, we have this, really great line between Stephen and his mom, where it's, there's more to things in heaven and earth than dreamt in your philosophies. Which is why, he reads all these religious texts and other versions or other ways of thinking, other ways of living your life, basically. It's because, he doesn't want to be just pushed down by, earth logic or heaven logic. Like, he just wants to experience it all. And I can get that, if you want to teach your kids about religion, that's one way to do it. That's really a way to do it. Teach them all these different aspects of, different religions, and then let them make their own minds up about what they want to choose, what they choose to follow, and what they choose to believe. To each their own. But after that, they're trying to find Luke, and they go, well, where's Luke at? And Stephen makes a comment, oh, he's probably in his treehouse. And Olivia looks at him and goes, very funny, mister, and walks off. Now, to anybody who, casually watching the show, just thinks, oh, nice, nice one, mister. That's just mom being mom. It's not mom being mom. And this is where the red door comes in at. Each of the kids have their own special rooms throughout this house. And for Luke, it was the tree house. For Shirley, it was like a hangout room. For Stephen, it was a gaming room. Nellie had the playroom. Every kid, and even Olivia, had her own red room. Now, here's a little fun fact, though. Hugh himself didn't have his own red room because the house itself was its own red room. That's basically what it was. Because the red room was supposed to keep people happy and preoccupied while the house basically festered and ate your soul bit by bit. And the rooms were supposed to keep everybody happy and shit, but the only thing that was keeping you happy was fixing this fucking house. Because, you know, as soon as they get the house fixed, they can make money, they can fucking move into their forever home, which they talk about extensively throughout this show. But, why, you know, nobody really noticed this until, like, the end of the show? I can only assume that it was the house. The house made it to where nobody really knows. And you see that through the dialogue with a lot of people, like when Steven finds, what is this? Some kind of vanity or something in the gaming room. And he tells Mrs. Dudley about it. Mrs. Dudley has no clue what the hell room he's talking about. Same thing with Nellie and the Cup of Stars. She tells Mrs. Dudley, hey, I found this tea set in my playroom. And she's like, what room? We don't have a play. Okay, yeah, you found it. Cool, you know, cool story. But it's little stuff like that that lets you know that there's not as many a room in this house as you think. There's really not. Like, I really thought this house was humongous until you find out that majority of the rooms we see are fucking fake. They're not even real. But we get our first fake room, which is Luke's treehouse, and while they're up there, Luke's writing, you know, no girls allowed. And this is where we get the E.T. lunchbox reference and all that. And they start, you know, Steven starts looking at the drawings and talking to the Luke about everything going on, you know, just, who's this little girl we see in this picture? Oh, that's Abby. Well, who's Abby? It's just a little girl that lives in the woods. Well, I too had an imaginary friend when I was growing up. She's not imaginary, she's real. And Luke is adamant, by the way, that this little girl is real. I too thought this little girl was fake until the ending of the show, and I was like, oh, she very much real and very much alive. Kind of. Again, we'll get to that set of episodes next week. But, you know, as they're talking about the drawings and all that stuff, of course, like I said, we cut to the drawing that Luke was doing of the woman in the pink dress and shit. Ding, 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 it's fucking Nellie. He had a future of Nellie. He had a future sense of Nellie. But, you know, once we get done with that cute little sentimental moment of the boys, you know, let's hang out together, boy time, you know, the cool kids, no girls allowed. Yeah, because he's mad at Theo for tearing down his signs of no girls allowed. We then cut back to Steven, who is now coming into his apartment, and we see Luke coming down from his apartment with a camera and an iPad. And we get the angle, and I mention the angle because here's something interesting about these episodes. Because most of the episodes from 1 through 5 take place within the same days, we get a lot of crossover scenes where we basically see, like this scene right here with Luke and Steve. We see Steven's perspective in this first episode, but we don't get to see Luke's perspective of the same scene until episode 4. And something I noticed about each perspective is the camera angles are different. They didn't use the same camera shots. So in this particular episode, when Steven is talking to Luke, we're looking up at Luke. And, you know, we're coming back to Steven looking up at Luke. Where in episode 4, Luke is talking to Steven, we're looking down at Steven from Luke's perspective, if that makes any sense. But, Luke's coming down. Luke looks like he's fucking drugged out of his mind. And he offers him $200. He's like, here's $200. Take the camera. Just leave me the iPad. I need my iPad. And Luke, of course, you know, takes what he can. He scurries on off. And, you know, he goes up to his room. And he sees Nellie standing there in the corner. And he's just like, oh, great. So you let him in. You let him do this. You let him rob me blind. You allowed this to happen. Nellie, how could you do? And he's just chastising her and just going on and on. And Nellie ain't saying shit. She's just standing there kind of like with a painful look on her face. Like she's about to bust out, either screaming or crying. But Steven don't care. Steven's on a rant. Steven's on a roll. And fucking Steven, you know, grabs the phone and picks it up because it's ringing. and it's his dad, and he's just like, Steven, I need to talk to you. What's up, Dad? You know, it's about Nellie. Yeah, let's talk about Nellie real quick. Yeah, and then that's when Hugh tells him, Nellie's dead. Nellie's gone. And Steven stops, just a look of horror on his face, and he turns around, and there's fucking Nellie right in front of him, and she screams, and it scares the shit out of him to the point that he falls down to the ground. But while she's screaming, she basically is decaying in front of him. And it scares him. It fucking scares him. And thus Steven sees his first official ghost that he is willing to admit was real. And thus is the ending of the first episode. Now, like I said, there's a lot of important information about this first episode, especially with a lot of the cutbacks, especially cutbacks to like the sofa scene and the first night, last night situation. Now, that's all very, very important. So now we go on to episode 2, which is called The Open Casket, which is Shirley's episode, or as I like to dub it, the cat episode. And if anybody knows this episode, y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about. So we have the opening of Shirley waking up from the gasp at 3:03 a.m. And, you know, she says, Nellie in the red room, and her husband wakes up, and he's just like, baby, you okay? You know, what you say? And she doesn't say anything. She just lays back down, and we cut to the credits, and then we cut to where the show opens up, which is, well, according to the show, yesterday. We open up to the day before Nellie kills herself, which is yesterday, with the creepy kid. Back when Nellie originally was trying to call Shirley. And she's basically trying to help the creepy kid talk, the creepy kid about his grandma and shit. Basically talk him down the way she was talked down, not down at, not like punching down or anything, but try to talk down on his level to explain why this is important, why having a viewing and saying goodbye is important. And she tried to use the same logic she got when she went to her mom's funeral, from the nice funeral director there. But you realize she, like Steven, very logic and realistic, but she's very short-fused, short-tempered, and a control freak. Unlike Steven, who kind of lets the wind go where the wind goes, she's very controlling. I mean, hell, she does, like, all the finite details. Her husband does all the business aspects of the business, the money-wise. But she does, like, the embalming, the flower arrangements, the fucking sets up, all that shit. She does that. So, while she's talking to this kid, we get a cut back to the past. And, this is where we learn a little bit about the parents, about how they're house flippers. And she discusses to Shirley about the forever home, about how she, wants to get enough money, because this is what the house was supposed to be. The house was supposed to be the final house they flipped to get enough money to build their forever home, which was supposed to be this beautiful house Olivia made herself. And unfortunately, we never actually get to see her forever house. We never actually get to see the forever house, like in actual I think we see like a basic modern model of it in Shirley's office, but we don't actually get to see Olivia's idea, like full idea. We see blueprints, but we don't get to see it actually come to fruition, which is disappointing because Olivia got fucked over badly by this house. Olivia, Luke, and Nellie got completely fucked over by this house when it came ghost-wise. Like, we thought Hugh got fucked over too, but it was mainly because Olivia was on some fuck shit. But Olivia got the fucking stick, Nellie got it, and so did Luke. Shirley, she just got a morbid view of death after all this shit. But, once they get done, little Nellie comes in, she wants a little tea party, and of course everybody tells her no, they're not in the mood, they're busy, they don't have time, so they decide to go outside and play. And, she's doing a little round, she's taking pictures of the property and of her dad, talking to Mr. Dudley, and of Luke sitting out kind of further away near the wood lines, and she, gives everybody the reminder, don't forget guys, 2 clicks to the light, we gotta come home. And Luke goes, okay, and then looks to the woods, and yet we see little Abby just sitting there at the edge of the woods, just waving away like fucking Pennywise over there. So once we cut back from Abby to Shirley walking around the property again, we get kind of a sense of how big the house is from the back end, because she travels a good fucking minute on this. But like, this has got to be several acres of land. I'm not even gonna lie, several acres of land. And she ends up going into this like garden shed or something, because she hears something. It's a little meows, little kittens. And of course, typically, oh, kittens, oh, and then she takes a picture. And something catches her eye in the back on the wall. She takes a picture again. She sees a face on the wall, and it freaks her out. So, Mr. Dudley and Hugh show up. It turns out it's an old hornet's nest that actually was formed around a old Halloween mask from back in the day. And they start talking about what to do with the kittens, because she's like, well, we can't leave them there. Where's their mom? And Mr. Dudley is just like, yeah, it's not normal for a cat mom to be gone this long at this time of day. Like, he knows a fucking cat schedule. There's always got to be one guy who just knows the routine of animals. But she makes a point to talk about the fact that she doesn't feel comfortable leaving these kittens outside because of the dogs. And Mr. Dudley's like, what dogs? What dogs are you talking about? And they're just like, the dogs we constantly hear barking late at night. And Mr. Dudley's like, there should be no dogs here. There should be no dogs. But they digress from that whole situation. And they agree to let her bring the cats in. And then we cut back to now, present day. Shirley, you find out Shirley is in a bit of a debt because she's giving too much. She's cutting prices left and right because she's giving too much. And her husband, it's just like, listen, you gotta stop this, okay? I get, charity cases and stuff, but if every case is a charity case, it might as well just be normal practice at this point. You gotta stop this. And of course, Shirley's got some kind of bleeding heart for other people, but not for her family, which is fucked up. But once, they get done talking about that, he walks off and she looks up and she gets a vision, or not really a vision, but an apparition of a dude sitting on her sofa with a glass in his hand, and he kind of cheers at her. And you don't know this until like later on. I don't remember exactly what episode it is, but you find out she's haunted by an affair that she had a few years prior, and it's haunted her for a long, long time. And you'll notice that about a lot of the characters. Everybody's got a secret. Everybody's got a fucking secret. Her secret, though, is she had an affair. Which you don't even find out. I don't think you find out a lot of the kids' secrets, such as Steven's secret for his wife, and Shirley's secret with her husband, and then her husband's secret to Shirley. But actually, no, you find out her husband's secret, Shirley's husband's secret, pretty early on, because Theo talks to him in episode 3. But, she's very haunted by this, but after that, we cut away to 6 years prior, and it's Shirley and Steven talking to somebody about putting Luke in rehab. And of course, rehab's fucking expensive, so she's got to choke out $6,000 a month for rehab. And she doesn't know how to take it, but you could tell at this point 6 years ago, everybody was on somewhat decent terms. I don't think Steven published The Haunting of Hill House just yet because she was still on communication terms with Steven. You'll notice after the publication of the book, she has less and less to say to Steven. Less and less to say, especially during episode 6. Actually, no, during episode 6, she has a lot to say. Shirley doesn't shut the fuck up during episode 6. Or 7. You punch me in the boob? Yeah. I'm sorry. I love that part. Again, I'll go over that part when we get to the episode next week. But Luke and Shirley and everybody, they're all getting along, and they're willing to help Luke out, get him in rehab. And it's a nice fucking rehab. Like, they have horses. Like Nellie keeps pointing out how all these interesting things in the brochure. She's like, they have horses. You can go horseback riding. They can do this. You got this. Trying to be optimistic, but very childish at the same time. And then, as she kind of cuts back from that thought of her using the money. We cut back from her using the money to buy a stay for Luke at the rehab center. She's digging through her drawers back at the house, and she finds a bunch of blank checks with her husband's name on them. And that gets her gears a turning. She starts to thinking for a minute, like, why does my husband have blank checks that I don't even know about? So then we cut back to the past yet again to an actually really, really good scene. So Shirley gets awoken by, I can't remember, it was whispers or bangs or something. Something awakens her by herself. And as she's waking up, Theo comes in and it's just like, what? What do you want? And she's like, what do you mean, what do I want? What do you want? You keep banging on the wall. What do you want? Oh, now I remember what Shirley got woken up to. Shirley got woken up from the damn dogs barking outside. So that lets us know these dogs are real. Like, we hear these dogs. So once she wakes up from the dogs and Theo comes in and demands to know what the hell is going on, a bang proceeds to happen on the wall, and it scares Theo into Shirley's bed. And these bangs get louder and louder, and they're going around this whole damn room, basically shaking the entire room, and the girls are screaming, just like, what the hell is going on here? And fucking dad comes storming in, and he's like, what the hell's up, girls? What's going on? What's happening? And they're like, there was these bangings, and then the dogs barking, and all the shenanigans, and of course, Dad, tries to calm them down, just, all right, girls, it's okay. Listen, this house is old. This house makes a lot of interesting noises, okay? And you just have to deal with it. But as he's talking about this house and all its bullshit, his face starts to deform and stretch out and do a loud yell and whatnot. And then it fucking cuts away. After that, it's basically a jump scare. It's basically a fucking jump scare. It cuts away. And then we go to Steven calling Shirley about Nellie. And she, because it was a nightmare. The whole dream sequence, not dream sequence, but the whole wall thing was like a nightmare Shirley was having of the past. But she gets woken up to Steven calling her, telling her that Nellie's dead. And, of course, Shirley, at first, she's in denial. She's like, no, she's not. She can't be dead. She ain't dead. She's not dead. And then she turns that into anger and points that at Steven. And she's like, you know what, Steven? This is your fault. This is all your fault. If you just would have listened to her, and she would have just done this and da-da-da, like, again, she's just raking poor Steven across the coal over here for no fucking reason. And, once they get done having that bit of a flashback, that bit of a moment, we flash back again to Shirley as a younger girl, and she's got those kittens, like I said, and one morning she goes to feed the kittens, and one of them's not moving. The kitten died. The kitten has passed away. So, being good parents, they're trying to teach their daughter the proper way to grieve when it comes to funerals. They actually explain what a funeral is, eulogies and all that. They're trying to be good parents, and you see that. You see them being good parents, teaching her about death, about how we must let go. Because, this is just life. This is what happens. And, why they're trying to, get everything situated to bury this cat, because Mom puts it in this cute little box she designs and everything. She goes to say something and sees that the cat's throat is moving. So she thinks the cat's alive, and she drops the box. She's holding this cat in her hands, and she's like, come on, little guy, come on, I'm here, it's okay. And we just keep zooming in and in on this cat until eventually you see a bug, a little green beetle, come out of the cat's mouth. And Shirley screams, and then we just cut away. To Shirley hosting the funeral. And it's the funeral for the creepy kid, with the whole grandma story and all that shit. And we get like a little tidbit of a back and forth of her dealing with her mom's funeral and this kid, how they're basically like identical in paths. She had to go up to the kid and go, hey man, I'll do this with you, let's go. This is okay. And it's the same thing that happened to her. She didn't want to go up there, and the guy was just like, hey, listen, I'll go with you. And we see that, everything is fine. Everything looks great. Grandma don't look creepy, and in Shirley's head, Mom didn't look bad. Mom looked good. Mom looked good for a dead corpse. I'm not gonna lie. Especially at how she died, she looked good. Like, she busted her head wide fucking open. Like, there was blood everywhere. Like, at one point, Hugh walks out covered in blood at the episode 5. That's how much blood was everywhere. But after the kid's funeral, she during this whole situation, after Steven tells her about Nellie's death, she takes it upon herself to do basically the embalming treatment and all that for Nellie. She decides that it's only right, it's only fair that she does this for Nellie. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I get it, I do. As a sister, as somebody who is a sister, I don't know how I would feel if I was in that line of work and I was doing this all on my sister. Like, I would break down. I don't think I should do it. I'm kind of with her husband. Like, they shouldn't have somebody else do it. But I get it. She wanted to have control of the situation. And she wanted to take care of Nellie and make sure Nellie's looking right and well. Because she was always there for Nellie. To a degree. She was always there for Nellie. Theo, not really there for Nellie, but she was there for Nellie. And I noticed that, especially during Nellie's episode, we get a lot of flashbacks. I see her in there a lot. Occasionally I see Theo, but again, they stopped communicating, I think, like 2 or 3 months prior before when we show up, because of an incident between them. But while she's doing all this, we get this whole like thing where they bring Nellie in and they fucking bring her in from the hearse, and Theo can't handle it, so Theo walks off. She's cleaning up Nellie, and Nellie looks bad. Of course, you pull the blood around her, fucking insects and bugs got at her. She looks horrible. But while she's cleaning it, we cut back to another moment with these damn fucking cats, where the next day she's bringing Nellie in to feed the rest of these cats, and one of the cats, again, looks kind of dead, so she picks it up and she's petting the kitten, and it fucking opens its eyes and it's blind. Like, it has no pupils, it's just got white, it's just white. And it freaks her out, and it freaks the parents out. So the parents proceed to take this cat and get rid of it. But Shirley doesn't know what happened to the cat. The parents do, Shirley don't. But while she's talking to Shirley about, the cat, Shirley asks her, what about the one little kitten, the blind one with the eyes, why couldn't I keep that kitten? And she's being a typical child, and she's just hammering it into her mom. And God bless Mom, she has a migraine attack, which is basically, they call it what do they call it? Was the color storm? Yeah, they call it a color storm, where she basically sees visions and stuff. She's very overwhelmed. But this one's different. This color storm that happens is basically like black. And as weird as it sounds, I get how she's describing it because I've seen the same shit. But it's basically like, if you close your eyes and like push your finger up against your eyeballs, it's the best way I describe it, and you see like fireworks. Not colorful fireworks, but like a bright light, but in the form of fireworks. That's what she was seeing. And because of this migraine, she couldn't finish telling her child the rest of the, what happened to these kitties and why we couldn't keep them and stuff. And she ends up, kind of white flag, all right, I'm done. We could have this conversation later. And she goes and she's sitting down, she's talking to Hugh about this whole situation. It's been a minute. And after she gets done describing, the color storm, what happened, he makes them comment, this was not our finest moment as parents. Like, this was not going to be our finest moment. She's like, well, what would you have done? What would you have said? And he hesitates and doesn't really say anything. And Mom gets mad. And it's just like, so you think we're just bad parents because we don't know how to handle the situation? And this gets an entire argument about her view of death. Not Olivia's, but Shirley, how she's going to have a fucked up view of death after all of this. And that they actually took the cat and put it down because it was disease-ridden. And because all this, starts a bit of an argument about, her view of death, it kind of came true in some aspects. She has a very fucked up view of death. I mean, look at the fact that she is cleaning up her sister. Her sister who hung herself. She is perfectly all right all the way up until, I think, the last, little bit of her cleaning her up. She, I think we cut away from the whole argument after, this is not our finest moment. And Shirley, still cleaning her up, and her kids come down to talk to her about, Aunt Nellie and about what happened. And she sums it up the best she can because she doesn't want to go into too much details about her job or what happened to Nellie. But, excusez-moi. But basically, she sums it up and tells them to go pick a picture out for Aunt Nellie for the viewing. And she goes back in to start, cleaning her up. And then we cut to a few years ago in the past where she's putting makeup on Nellie when she's alive. And Nellie's getting married. And Nellie's also happy, and we're all happy. We're all having a good time. We cut back to this wedding a couple of times throughout the first few episodes. Cut to Nellie's wedding, especially during Nellie's episode. But we cut away. And while she's getting Nellie looking good, she looks up out the window. She sees Luke. So she stands up and runs outside and basically stops Luke from coming into the wedding venue and tells Luke he's too fucking high, he shouldn't be here, go away. Here's some money, go away. Just go away. She basically sends Luke away. And she comes back, acts like nothing happened. She's talking to Nellie, and Nellie's like, well, how is everything? Oh, everything's perfect, wonderful, it's wonderful, it's all going great. And Nellie's just like, yeah, it's almost perfect. Because she really wants her brother there. She really wants her brother there. But Shirley sent Luke away because Shirley's trying to do what's best for Nellie. And I can get why Shirley did that for Nellie. I've seen it where, especially since I had siblings who, were meth heads. I've seen it where they fucking can tweak out to you in the drop of a fucking hat. Like, drop of a dime, boom, they're fucking, flipping tables and shit. And Luke's a heroin addict. So he can literally flip a fucking switch and lose his shit, basically. But I feel like Luke would have had enough self-control for Nellie so he could go to her wedding. I feel like he would have had enough self-control, but that's here nor there. In the overall scheme of everything. And it sucks, because I really would have liked to see, Luke be there for her actual wedding, but Shirley being Shirley, trying to protect her sister. Being that fucking control freak she likes being. So, after the wedding flashback, we cut back to her, finishing up on Nellie, and she finally cries. She finally cried. I don't mean just a, oh, Nelly. No, I mean a full-on sob. She falls down on the ground. She is sobbing like a motherfucker. She has just lost her cool. And I get that, and I appreciate that. The fact that she was able to stand strong and hold her emotions in until she was done with Nelly. And then she lost it because she realized what she was looking at. And after she collects herself, she cleans herself up, she goes to step out, she hits the lights, and there's her mom laying in the next bed over. And she, kind of like freaks out for a second because, mom sits up and has the box that had the kitten in it. And of course, typical cat jump scare. And fucking makes her turn the lights on. Nobody's there. She turns the lights back off and closes the door. And we're back with her in the office. And while she's shutting down her office for the day, she goes to walk away, and we zoom in on the model of the forever home that she has, that her mother designed. And the little porch light on the little dollhouse flicks on and off as a, hey, come home. Now, like I said before, with the whole titles of each episode representing something deeper into the show, Open Casket. The whole point of Open Casket is Shirley dealing with death, especially looking at death in the face, looking at her own mother who is having an open casket. And Nellie as well has an open casket during her funeral, or viewing, because we don't even get this. No, we see her funeral. I take that back. We see her funeral. Then we have episode 3, which is Theo's episode, and it's called Touch. Now, to sum up, Touch is basically Theo's ability to fucking touch things and sense what's going on. So, again, we awaken at 3:03 a.m. with Theo I take that back. This is actually not the 303 opening. This is because I didn't write it down. It's in the past. It's in the fucking past. This is when they were kids, and Theo's in bed sleeping. Now, this scene's iconic as hell because not only was it in the book, but it was also in the original 63 version of this movie. And it's the "who's holding my hand" scene. Where basically Theo's in bed, and she's laying there, and she thinks Nellie came into her room and is cuddling up with her and holding her hand. And while she is, holding her hand, it keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And she's like, "Nellie, stop. Nellie, this hurts. Nellie, stop." And she gets up and turns the light on, and there's nobody in the fucking room. She's just looking around, and she looks at her hand, and she just goes, "Who was holding my hand? Whose hand was I holding?" Which again is the iconic line, "Whose hand was I holding?" Dun dun dun, it was a ghost. Anyway, once we get done with that and we go to the opening credit scene, we then cut to Theo as an adult, and we find out she is a child psychologist. Which has gotta be, which has gotta be a really tough job, the fact that she has the psychic ability to touch and sense things. And if you're a child psychologist, when a child needs psychiatrist help, it's never a good thing. It's never a good thing. And she works with a lot of foster kids, so you know where this shit's going. But one of her children that she's talking with is talking about a guy that she's found called Mr. Smiley that keeps haunting her, that lives under the house in the basement. And she tries to talk to the little girl about, all these, because she touched the little girl and she realized there's all these walls that were built up around her, so she can't really get inside of her head. And she's talking to the dads and the mom, the foster parents, about this whole situation, and they just don't know what to do. She was a good girl, now her grades are bad and all this shit, and now Theo's got to figure out what's wrong with this little girl. But before we can get that far, we cut to Theo and how she found out about her magic touch ability. And one of the days she was cleaning out one of the rooms with her dad, and he's like, "Throw all the junk away, keep all the good shit." You know the drill. And she picks up a box and she's just like, oh, there's something in here. That's great. And her dad's like, well, let's just take a look. And they fucking pop it open and it's a nice ass bottle of wine. A nice ass bottle of wine. An expensive ass bottle of wine to boot. But once she sees the wine, she starts getting a sense that something's up. Like, she's got this weird ability. And she goes to walk away, and she makes a mention about how cold the fucking house is. Like, she's like, this house is always so damn cold. And you see this throughout the rest of the episode, but she wears sweaters constantly. And it's like the middle of summer, by the way. It's like the middle of summer, but she is constantly wearing sweaters inside this house. Because she is that damn cold. And again, we have another hidden ghost hanging around. He's right, I think, behind... when she's walking away, you can kind of see him. He's in the background. Again, a lot of these hidden ghosts are hard to see because they're all out of focus. Don't shoot the messenger. But once, we get done with that flashback, we cut back to a 6 years prior flashback. And it's about the book money. She took the book money. She took the book money. Because she wanted to get her PH motherfucking D. But we don't find that out till later. But they are talking about the blood money and about how no one's going to accept, Shirley's little thing about no one's going to take this money and blah, blah, blah. And she takes the money. She takes the money. But after that, we then cut back to, when they were children. And ding, 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 secret room right here. We're with Theo in the red room, but it's not the red room, it's her dancing room. And she is dancing to a music video or something on the VHS player she's got. And she sees something underneath the door, and then the door bang. Just like someone just banging the door. And she goes to investigate, she thinks it's Luke, so she's like, not funny, Luke. Plot twist. That's loops around to when Shirley and Nellie were trying to open the red door originally. That loops around back to there. She was in the red room. She was the one in there. Theo was the one dancing. That's why no one could get in the room at the time, because she was in there. The house lets you in that room when the house wants you in that room. When the house doesn't want you, you can't get in that damn room. But once we get done with that, Theo's downstairs and she's getting a glass of water, and fucking Luke's messing with the dumbwaiter and he wants to play on it, and Mrs. Dudley just goes off on him, just like, son, don't be playing with that shit. Alright, this is dangerous. This is all very dangerous. And Theo kind of bucks up against her and just like, hey man, don't talk to my brother like that. There are ways to talk to him, just not like that. And Mrs. Dudley, of course, apologized and just explained, the dumbwaiter is not safe. Don't mess with it. Don't mess with it. And, again, we get a little hidden ghost here that's by the kitchen laundry room area in the window. We see that ghost a couple of times, actually. But at a later point, though, like later on that night, Theo comes back downstairs to get something to drink, and there's fucking Luke and the dumbwaiter trying to push it down, but because the door's open, it won't go. So he's just like, hey, could you maybe just this one time, just please let me go into the dumbwaiter? And of course Theo is like, okay, I'll do it. And she don't tell anybody. Well, that backfires like a motherfucker. And instead of going up, Luke goes down. And Luke's in the cellar, and he's looking around, and he ain't alone. There is another figure who I think is Edward Hill, one of Hazel's kids. Who was it? Yeah, Edward Hill. I think that's supposed to be Edward Hill down there. But he starts coming at Luke, and we cut back to Theo, trying to, push the button and shit, and then we hear Luke scream. The parents come in, we get him out of that fucking dumbwaiter, and his shirt's ripped. Like someone grabbed his shirt and just ripped that bitch. he's okay and everything. Like, doesn't have any scratches, but his shirt's fucking ripped, and Theo's in trouble for letting her brother go down there. But, you know, after that, we then cut back to Theo waking up from a nightmare of Mr. Smiley at the foot of her bed. And when she wakes up, she flips on her lights, and that's where we kind of get a cut back to when Shirley was coming to tell Theo about the death of Nellie. And that's what happens here, is she sits down and talks to Theo about Nellie's passing. Then we cut back to Nellie's wedding. This shit's just fucking hilarious. So during Nellie's wedding, they can't seem to find the bridesmaids or, you know, a couple of the groomsmen. So Steven and Nellie go to find, the bridesmaid. They find one of them getting laid in another room. So they knock and go, hey, toast for 10 minutes ago. And they're laughing. And everything's good. And Steven's just like, wait a minute. I want to see who's in there. I just want to see. It's like, yeah. And they're making bets on who's in the room. And then, when you know, it's fucking Theo walking out. And this is actually kind of a sweet moment because this is when she kind of came out to them. Like, they didn't realize she was gay until that moment. And they're just like, oh, well, alrighty then. Like, they love her. They love her. They don't care if she's gay. They love her. But they go, oh, okay, let's get back down to the party and shit. So, yeah, basically, Theo fucked a bridesmaid. You know how weddings are. So once we get down with that, and we cut back to them talking about Nellie's death in the present time, of course, Theo's mad about the whole situation. She's just like, she should know better. Nellie should know better what suicide does to a family. Nellie should know, like, she blames Nellie. She's just like, Nellie should know better. Why did Nellie do this? Why would Nellie do this to our family after everything that's happened? And once we get done with that kind of flashback of them, Theo trying to comprehend why Nellie would do such a thing, we cut back to Theo finding the ladder. She's talking to Luke about the situation because no one believes them about this basement, which, there's a lot of things people don't believe about in this goddamn household because it's not on the blueprints. Yeah, there's an entire bootlegger operation going on in the basement. Of course that wouldn't be on the blueprints. But they're talking about it. She asked how many steps it was, and she counts it out. And this is where we see another hidden ghost in the laundry room, sitting right there by the window. And she finds the secret passageway that leads down to the cellar. And yet again, we see another hidden ghost. He's underneath the ladder. And she goes down there, and of course, everything is covered in cobwebs. It's literally an old bootlegging operation. It has even ledgers and shit. But she finds all this stuff, and of course, she brings this up to her mom and them. But we don't find out about that until a couple more scenes later. So then we cut back to Theo when they're bringing Nellie in, and Shirley's standing there waiting for them to bring her body in, and Theo runs off. We find out why she ran off. She ran off because she is thinking about her case with the little girl and Mr. Smiley. So she goes to the little girl's house and talks to the foster parents and gets downstairs into the basement. And she finds this sofa and she sits there. And it all comes to her what happened to the little girl. And basically, to sum it up, foster daddy is molesting this little girl. Straight up. And the reason she's seeing Mr. Smiley is because above her on the ceiling it's old-fashioned wood too. So the wood's warped in a way that it looks like two eyeballs and a smile. She created Mr. Smiley to deal with the fact that her foster dad was molesting her. That's fucked up, man. That's fucked up. I cannot stand people like that. And I'm glad Theo called the police and got him arrested, because Theo did. After she saw that, she needed confirmation, so she went upstairs and shook the man's hand and kind of got confirmation of, yeah, I diddled my fucking foster kids. So she called backup and was just like, am I ever wrong about this? I'm sure you put some pressure on him, he'll tell you the truth. And when you know, a little spineless dick cracked under pressure. Hope he comes Bubba's butt bitch in prison. Anyway, after they find out about, who Mr. Smiley is and about her dealing with this, the situation, we cut to a past situation of Theo talking to her mom about the gift she's got. And her mom's like, it's hereditary, I have it, your grandmother had it, I'm sure your other sister has it. We all had this sense of ability, this sense of feeling the sixth sense in a way. And this is when she gets kind of a foreshadowing of what happens in the future with her mom, because her mom touches her, and she looks up, and she just sees her mom covered in blood with her head split open, and she's like, is everything okay, sweetheart? And it freaks her out, so she screams. And once that gets taken care of, mom calms her down and everything, and they continue on talking about about her power. She's like, Nellie says the house is loud, which is a weird way to describe a house, but that's the way Nellie describes the house. It was loud, and that she's always wearing sweaters in the summer and stuff. And then she proceeds to give Theo these gloves, and she's like, listen, people may not understand, people may not know, but I'm here, I understand. You need someone to talk to about this, I'm here. And if it gets too much, I'm here. And when you get older, we'll talk more about this. And so she puts the gloves on, she touches her mom, and everything's okay, and she gets a sense of relief that maybe this is a way for her to control her powers in some aspects. So then after that, we cut to the whole conversation Theo's having when she takes the money from Steven, and about how she's going to get her PhD motherfucking D in psychology because of the blood money. And of course she points out to Steven about how he got some stuff wrong in the book, about how she was the one that found the bootlegging thing in the ledger and all that. It wasn't Luke. And all this shit. And, excuse moi. And after that, we cut back to present day Theo, and she goes into the fucking morgue room where Nellie's at, and it's explained later on episode 6 or 7, I think it's 7 actually, why she does this, but she touches Nellie. And it doesn't take her long to see what happened with Nellie, and she lets go, and she falls to the ground just sobbing like a motherfucker, just uncontrollably screaming and sobbing. And once, that clears up, she clears herself out, we cut to her sitting on the porch drinking. And at this point, for the rest of at least till episode 6, she's drinking for the rest of the fucking episodes. Because she's fucked up. After touching Nellie, it was like touching death itself. Like, it was just cold nothingness, emptiness. And she goes into more details in episode, I think it's episode 7. She goes into more details about the situation. But, while she's out there drinking, Shirley's husband comes out, and they start talking. She goes, oh, by the way, Shirley told me she found your blank checks. And he goes, ah, shit. Da-da-da-da, his secret. He, too, took the money. Everybody but Shirley took Steven's blood money. And no one wants to tell Steven. No one wants to tell Shirley about the money. And so Theo looks at him and goes, you better come up with something fast, like another mistress or a mistress or another family or something, because it'll hurt a lot less than the actual truth. Because he took the money because she was hemorrhaging so much money in her business that they were about to lose the business. So he needed the money, so he took the money. But she don't give a fuck. She don't give a fuck. So then after that, we cut to the last night again with Theo and what she saw. And basically what she saw was she woke up to some screaming, went downstairs to investigate, and Hugh comes out with the kids. Mainly it's Luke and Nellie, and tells them, take the kids, go to the car. We gotta go. And they hear like a weird banging in the background, and he panics, so he grabs Theo and goes to drag her out, and because she's not wearing her gloves or anything, she sees everything that just happened. We get a little bit of flash of it, where we see a ghost, which is Poppy's ghost. Olivia's being slammed up against the wall, a flip table, just little tidbits of what's going to happen in the last episode. And then we basically just cut straight from there. And that's basically episode 3 with Theo. And like I said, when it came to the touch, the whole situation of touch was her sense of ability, and the fact that she touched her sister and is now stuck in this, I don't know, like a weird abyss, like weird feeling of abyss, because nothing's helping her. Like even thousands of drinks is not helping this woman. But then now we come to episode 4, which is called The Twin Thing. And The Twin Thing is Luke's episode, and this one actually lets in a lot more information about Luke and Nellie's relationship, especially when they were kids. So the opening is basically Luke talking to Abby about the ghost in the cellar, about how no one believes it's real, about how no one will listen to him, and especially about Abby. No one's listening to him about Abby either, but he's like, well, I'm glad at least you're here. At least you're real in here. But we're still left wondering whether or not she's actually there or not. And again, guys, she's very much real. It's not until like episode 9 when Abby is actually dead. Every other time we've seen her, though, she's very much alive. So once we get done, again with the opening credits and all that shit, we then cut to a few years prior yet again, and it's Luke's first time in rehab. And while Luke's in rehab and he's listening to some stories and shit, and there's a guy there talking about how he went to the Iraq War and he saw a child die in front of him, but it wasn't just the way they died, it's how they died. Apparently an explosion happened and this child comes out and her eyeballs are melting. They're melting out of her sockets, out of her skull. And that's something that haunts the dude to the point that he dropped some acid and thought he saw that little girl coming at him, that he took a knitting needle to his eyes and basically blinded himself. And Luke's just like, I can't top that story. Because Paige, his caseworker, goes, well, Luke, do you want to share anything? He's like, I just can't top that. Like, no. But this also gets us an introduction into Joey, which is a girl he likes, who helped him out when he was first coming down off of rehab, coming into rehab, and he was coming down. And if anybody knows, when an addict comes down, it's not pretty. It's not. Heroin addicts and meth addicts, when they don't have their fix and they're coming down, it ain't pretty. It's ugly. They say things they don't mean. They say things just to get that hit, and we actually find out more about that when it came with Luke later on in this episode. But after I'm getting really tired of people bothering me today. Sorry guys, I just got another text message yet again for the 7th time in a row in the past 20 minutes, and it's not an emergency, by the way. It's not an emergency. Anyway, so after the story, we meet the girls, we then cut to 2 days before Nellie's suicide. And it's Luke getting his 90-day chip, and he's thanking everybody. He's like, I'd like to thank Paige, my co-worker. I'd like to thank, people out there who helped me. Because he's stuck on step 4. And that's a hard step for a lot of people to get past through. And then once we get done with that, we cut back to Luke as a child sitting on his bed with a bunch of army men. And he's placing them in a little circle, and he's counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we don't know exactly what that means until later on. But after he gets done with the seventh thing. Oh shit! Hang on, I lost my train of thought real quick. He talks about the seventh thing though to Nellie, because Nellie, of course, wakes up and has a nightmare about the bit net lady, and he talks to her about the rule of seven, and the seven represents the seven family members of the Crane family. And once we get a little bit of taste of that, we cut to the kids. It's basically Luke and Nellie in the library with Hugh, and Nellie's hiding. Fucking Olivia comes down. She's like, "Has anybody seen Nellie?" "Oh, well, I thought Nellie might like these nice buttons right here." And fucking Nellie comes out, and they give Luke a hat, and Nellie the buttons. And this is when the mom kind of gets a flash of the future and the past at the same time. So while they're going through this box and they send the kids on their way, she grabs this little shawl and she puts it around herself. She's snuggling up with it, up against Hugh, and she's like, "I see three chairs over here, a shelf made for a little boy in a wheelchair." And she's basically describing the Hill family, and she doesn't even realize it, and you as the audience don't even realize it unless you're paying attention to the details. But she's talking about the Hill family, especially the little boy in the wheelchair. That's Poppy's son. And she sees all of that and describes it to Hugh, and then looks up and goes, "Now you need to take care of that," pointing at the rafters, because all I see is hanging bodies from it, just swaying back and forth. And that's literally a tidbit of the future for what happens to Nellie. So after that, we cut to Luke waking up at 3:03 a.m. and Luke, after he grasps his neck, he sees Nellie in the room standing there. And he then gets like a flashback vision. Then once again, we cut back to the past. Yet again, back to the past. And it's them playing with this phone device that's in the house, where it's literally hooked up from one of the bedrooms all the way down to the kitchen. And Nellie and him, they're throwing little buttons down it to let it roll out and shit. And while they're throwing the little buttons, Nellie goes, "Do you have all three buttons?" He goes, "No, I only have two." "What do you mean you only have two? I sent down three." And then while they're doing that, the button just rolls out by itself, and they start hearing whisperings. So he goes to check it out, and he goes up to the bedroom and looks in. He's like, "There's nobody here, Nellie. There's nobody here." "Yeah, that's what I thought." And while they're having a conversation, he sees the ghost of Hazel in the reflection of this phonograph device, and it scares him. So he takes the fuck off. And yet again, we see another hidden ghost by the stairwell. The ghosts like to hang out in the foyer, by the way. I'm just saying. Foyer in the kitchen. So after that, and he wakes up properly that next morning, and we get told that Joey's gone. Now, Joey, like I said, is a girl he met, and she was in rehab with him, and they were talking about, the incident of, how we get past step 4, and about, his house, about the house, and about dealing with it. And you don't go into too much detail about it, but something's really bothering Joey. And Joey doesn't make mention of it, but says, "Don't worry about it. She'll see him later." And, the next morning, she's not there. He gets a note that's from Joey that says, "Don't follow me." So he decides to go follow her anyways. And as he's trying to track her down, he is feeling the twin thing. He's feeling the twin thing. He is feeling the death of Nellie. He's starting to shiver. He's starting to feel cold. He keeps touching his neck and rubbing it. And he's not on anything. He makes mention that several times. Of course, no one believes him because he's a drug user. But no one believes him. And he's just like, "I haven't been using, but I feel like death. I feel like I've used, but I haven't used." But we see that as, as he's searching further and further for Joey as the night progresses, you see him just get worse and worse. And as he's looking for Joey, he sees Mr. Hill. Now, the thing with the Mr. Hill jump scare is he keeps getting closer and closer the more we look at Mr. Hill. And I don't mean like within that same scene, as the episode progresses and we see Mr. Hill, he keeps getting closer and closer to Luke until he's literally up against Luke's fucking back. But after he zones out for a little bit and sees Mr. Hill, he finds Joey and he tries to, talk to Joey. And, why'd you run away? We could have done this. I'm going to help you like you helped me. All right? We got this. And I hate to say it, but Joey don't want to help. Joey doesn't want it. Joey literally fucks over Luke so bad right here. But basically, once he finds Joey and he's talking to her about the twin thing, about how one time he broke his foot or something, and then Nellie felt it, and all this shit. They get to Steven's wife's house, Leah, which I haven't said her name, by the way, because she's really not that much of an important character to me. But his wife's house, and Luke's trying to talk to her, hey, can me and my friend come in? I'm clean, 90 days sober, blah, blah, blah. She's just all like, listen, Steven don't live here anymore. Okay, I don't really want to get into it, but we're on separation terms, so you and your friend got to go. And closes the door. So, of course, he gets the address, though, from Steven's wife about where Steven's at. So this is where we cut to Steven coming in to Luke stealing his shit at the stairwell. And like I said earlier, we had that different camera angle where we're looking down at Steven now. And now it all makes sense. Steven doesn't know, but we as the audience now know, because we watched this episode, that Luke isn't high. He ain't coming down. He's feeling the effects of the death of his sister, and he needs the money not because he wants to go get high, but because he wants a safe place for Joey to come down safely. Which, give him credit, man. That's a nice, sweet thing. That is super nice and super sweet that he wants to do that. But addict gonna be addict, man. Because of this. After, oh shit, I forgot to mention something about before they left. While Luke's there talking to Steven's wife before he leaves, he gets a flashback of when he brought Joey over originally into the house. And Steven basically chastised him for it, just like, yeah, good choice of women, man, another druggie, great. And he's not impressed, because he knows Luke, and he knows Luke's just gonna relapse, because he feels confident in Luke relapsing, because that's what he always does. He fucking relapses. And he thinks that girl's not gonna help him out. So they argued about that. But he was still willing to stay by Joey's side during the whole situation. This is why we had that flashback, to show you that even when his own brother was talking mad shit on her, he was still willing to be like, hey man, she helped me out the worst time. So it makes sense that he wants to help her out during her worst time. Unfortunately though, before they can get to the motel, she goes, oh, I have to use the little junkie's room. I'll be right back. She leans in, she kisses him, and then walks off. Luke's standing there for a moment, and then he realizes she's gone. Joey took the money, the $200 Steven gave him, and just left. Never to come back. And that royally fucked him up. And then while he's searching for Joey, we cut to his 90 Days Sober speech, which is audio monologue over what's going on to Luke now. And the speech is very beautiful, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't write everything down in the speech, but the speech is very beautiful about having to never give up, having the support system, having the ability to see what's wrong and fixing yourself, helping yourself out. And while this whole monologue is going on, you seeing poor Luke just get mugged. They steal his fucking shoes. They take his jacket. Like, he gets his ass kicked and everything. And then literally he calls, Paige again. Because throughout this episode, he's calling Paige, his caseworker, about, hey, man, please just let us come back. At least let her come back. Let her crash down. And Paige ain't going for it. So that second time he calls her, he's trying to iterate, I haven't used, and she's just like, Luke, we gotta talk. This is about the Nellie situation, but he doesn't know this. So they go find him, Paige and Steven, and Luke's pacing back and forth, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then continues. And while he's doing that, you see Mr. Hill just standing there like a motherfucker. Now, my thing is with Mr. Hill is this motherfucker is a douchebag ghost. This is why he's a douchebag ghost. Alright, so this motherfucker, there's a flashback scene I forgot to mention earlier in the scene. Shortly after Nellie's death, we have this flashback scene where Luke is asleep and he gets awoken to, something boom, boom, throughout the hallway, and he opens it, and there's fucking William Crane floating there. He's at least like 8 feet tall. That's not including him floating, by the way. At least when he's floating, he's like 9 feet tall. And he's got a long ass cane that hits the ground. And he proceeds to, I guess, check all the rooms. He literally opens the doors, checking on everybody. And he gets to Luke and Nellie's room. And Luke goes to hide underneath the bed. And this motherfucking ghost just comes floating his ass in, right? And comes, leans over, looks at Nellie, looks over at Luke's bed, goes to walk off, and poor Luke just can't hold his breath in anymore. Fucking, lets that shit out. Fucking Mr. Hill turns around, let me phrase that. He floats around and then proceeds to look underneath the bed and scare the shit out of poor Luke. All because Luke has his hat, by the way. Luke took his hat. And that's all I'm pretty sure that ghost wanted, was his hat, because he took it out of the room before he was about to float off. He took his fucking hat. Anyway, that is why Mr. Hill is very trying towards Luke, though, is because Mr. Hill basically is haunting Luke because of the whole hat thing. Apparently he's that petty about the fucking hat. He's just like, how dare you? How dare you steal my hat, son? Give that back. But because of that, like I said, when he's doing the counting, waiting for Steven and Paige to show up, Mr. Hill is right behind him. And literally is like back to back with Luke. And Luke eventually mans up and goes to face Mr. Hill. And guess what? It ain't Mr. Hill. It's his mother. She's standing there, she smiles, and then her eyes get super, super white. And it fades into a car light, driving by. And as Steven comes out and hugs Luke, and Luke's just again adamant. I haven't been using, man. I feel like I have, but I haven't used. And he's just going on and on and on. And Steven's just like, Luke. Nellie's dead. And he just can't. It can't sink in for him. So he just goes, oh. But for us as the audience, now we are aware of the fact that Nellie's dead. Luke's next. It's coming at Luke. Why would the house fuck with Luke that damn badly if it wasn't coming after him next? But that's the ending of basically episode 4, which is called The Twin Thing. And again, guys, like I said, the whole twin thing is explained a lot in this episode. Like, they make a lot of jokes and comments about it. It's actually mentioned a lot about the twin thing. They even say in the next episode, it's a twin thing. So now we get to my second favorite episode of the entire franchise. I'm not gonna lie, this is my second favorite episode. Because this episode blew my fucking mind. I am not even joking, it blew my fucking mind. So this episode is called The Bitten Net Lady, and this is Nellie's episode. So during the opening, we don't even have a little opening like we had the last 4 episodes, where it was like, everyone waking up at 3:03 a.m. or just little tidbits, the holding hands story, all that gone. It's just straight to credits. We open straight to credits to the first night, which is again with the Bitten Net Lady comes in at, and we see Nellie asleep when she was a kid. And she wakes up, and there's the Bitten Net Lady standing at the edge of the bed, all in a black silhouette. And it screams at her. And after the scream, we cut to her in the bed with her parents crying about the Bitten Net Lady and what she's talking about it. And she's describing it, and she describes it as a BitNet lady. And fun fact, here's another hidden ghost, is right behind Olivia during this conversation. It's in the back. Almost missed it. Took me 2 times rewinding it to catch it. But after they, calm her down, they talk about it. We cut to the sofa scene, and she's talking about this locket she has. And now I'm not saying Olivia's got favorite kids, but Olivia clearly has favorite kids, and it's Luke and Nellie, because she's got a locket with just their pictures in it. None of the other kids, not her husband, just Nellie and Luke. So, Olivia, your favoritism's showing. But she talks about the locket and goes, hey, maybe when you get older, I can give this to you, so why not for now, while you sleep tonight, you can hold on to it. So while she's holding on to it, of course, we have the whole BitNet lady situation where she's having her sleep paralysis, and the BitNet lady is over her going, no, like just saying no repeatedly. And then we have a little monologue over that of Nellie explaining her sleep paralysis to a sleep tech. And why she's explaining her sleep paralysis, of course, she's being heard. This guy is listening to her. She said that her last doctor just said no TV before bed. But it's nice to be heard. And while they're talking this shit, he asks this basic question. He's like, do you drink coffee? And she, kind of smiles and gets a little flustered for a second and goes, oh, well, I wasn't sure how. And before she could finish that statement, he goes, it was a questionnaire for the paper we're doing. Oh, yeah, right, yeah. And then he saves that shit by going, I was going to wait till after the interview to ask you for coffee. And this is how she met Arthur, her husband. He was her sleep tag, and he was super supportive and listening to her. And this is where we get this beautiful fucking moment of happiness for Nellie. I'm sorry, pure fucking happiness. We get to see her and Arthur go on dates and hang out, and we see her get married, and we see the little dance she has, and fucking, she's happy, we're all crying, because we know none of this is about to fucking last, because this is the Haunting of Hill House. So, during the wedding, while we're actually here, this part's just funny to me. This part's just fucking funny. So after the little montage, we get this moment where we're at the wedding, and Nellie's dancing with Steve, and they're looking at Shirley, who's looking at Theo, who's dancing with the bridesmaid she was fucking earlier in her chapter, and Shirley's just sitting there it's taking her a minute to process what's going on. They're just like, do you think she's gonna figure it out? And you just see her just staring. And then it finally clicks that her sister's a lesbian, and you just see this, this confused fucking look. And they both die laughing, going, it took her finally 10 minutes to figure this out. 10 fucking minutes. And then, and after that, she sees her mom next to Hugh at the wedding, which actually means something, because you find out in Hugh's chapter, which ain't until chapter 7 or 8, Hugh constantly sees his wife. We get a bit of a tidbit during the first episode when Hugh's packing up to go and meet Nellie. He's talking to somebody, but it almost sounds like he's talking to himself. Because he cuts himself off. He's like, she didn't explain anything. I know I have to go. But you don't think much of it. You really don't. So, after she sees the ghost, she's talking to Steve. And then this is when we find out, of course, that creme de la creme, her name is Eleanor Vance. She is that Eleanor, which was, again, rather obvious from the names. Because Luke, Theo, and Nellie are all taken from the original book. Luke being the original owner, descendant. Theo was a psychic who had the feeling of touch. And Nellie, of course, was suffering from the grief of her mother. And the whole reason why the house was attacking people was because they wanted her to come home. So, after the wedding, we get a couple more tidbits of Arthur really being a good husband, helping her through her sleep paralysis and everything. And life is good. Life is good for 2 years for Nellie. And then good feelings gone. Good feelings go. She has another attack when she sees the Bentnet lady, and Arthur gets up to go, turn on the light and help her through it. And as he gets up, he has an aneurysm. I'm not even joking. This ain't like, you ever heard the joke, I have an aneurysm and die? He literally had an aneurysm and died. Like right in front of her. So you get this heartbreaking scene, like I'm talking about, like it's gut punching of her fighting her sleep paralysis, crawling, not even crawling out of bed, she falls out of bed and crawls to Arthur, flips him over and sees that he's dead, and she just sobs. She just sobs, and there's no consoling her. And I don't blame her. She just watched her husband, the love of her life, the whole reason she hasn't seen this Bentnet lady in 2 fucking years, just die in front of her. So while she's talking to a psychiatrist about the death of her husband, the dude's kind of a dick. He's kind of a standoffish dick about the situation. Again, he's a psychiatrist, so he's very logical and reasonable. Like, you can't keep blaming this house. You always blame this house. It's a house. It's a dead carcass. Don't blame this house. It has nothing to do with what's going on. Which, in actuality, we as the audience know, it has everything to do with that fucking house. This house is just hungry for souls, hungry for ghosts, just hungry for murder. I bring you murder. Judas. That's basically the house right there. That's basically the house. The house is fucking Judas. Anyway, because the doctor's kind of denouncing all this shit, we didn't cut back to a past moment of Nellie in the playroom. And Nellie finds, of course, Jacqueline's Cup of Stars, and we learn a little bit about the Cup of Stars. And I think as Mrs. Dudley puts it, never give up your Cup of Stars, because once they take your Cup of Stars away, you will never get it back. And she's more talking about, I guess more towards Jacqueline, about how Jacqueline kind of let the craziness really go out of hand here. After. Because she kind of let the craziness get out of hand with the kids and shit. And, excuse me. And the Cup of Stars basically represent never letting go of what's really going on. Never let the light go out in your life. And, shortly after, the Cup of Stars, she goes to clean it up because it's covered in dust and mildew and probably some black mold and asbestos and God knows what else. Olivia comes in, pissed as fuck. Like, she's not yelling or anything, but she got that mom piss. And we all know that mom piss. She's coming in with that look of just, I'm gonna beat your fucking ass. I'm gonna beat that ass. And of course, Nellie's oblivious to all this. And she's like, can we have a tea party now, Mom? Please, please. And Olivia's like, no. Come here. And he takes her to her room, and there on the wall says, come home now. And she's adamant that Nellie did this because she saw Nellie with the chalk. And Nellie's like, it wasn't me. And Theo's just like, I know it wasn't her. And of course, Mom gets another migraine, tells both the girls to clean it up, and then walks off. And then once again, Theo concurs to Nell that she believes her about the situation, that she believes her about everything, that it wasn't her. So after that, we cut back to another past event, not children's past, but like a few months prior, and it's Nellie picking Luke up. Now, her and Luke are talking about, what's going on in life, about, how things are going. And he's leading her somewhere, and they pull off to the side. Now, this scene is fucked up. This scene is fucked up in so many ways. It's not because of, it's like blood or guts or gore or scariness. It's literally something a sibling should never put their other sibling in and ask this much of. But basically, Luke tells Nellie to go buy him heroin because the guy he's buying the heroin from, basically he owes him money and doesn't want to get his ass kicked. And he convinces her by manipulating her, going, I can't bullshit you, Nell. I could bullshit Shirley, I could bullshit Steve, but I can't bullshit you. Once I get clean, this is it, this is the road. And he's literally trying to convince her to buy this heroin by saying he can only get clean if he gets dirty to begin with, and that he just needs this. He needs this high, and that he's willing to listen to her and her problems and what's going on if she just does this one favor. And he's a typical drug head. And what sickens me about this is because I've been there. Not the Luke part, but I was Nellie. My brother, during his issues, asked me at one point to give money so he could go get high. And just like Luke, he gave me a bunch of fucking excuses and reasonings why he should do it, why he needs it. And like Nellie, I broke down, I gave him the money. I didn't do what Nellie did and, go get it for him, but, I felt that. This is why that scene sickens me, and it makes me feel emotions. Like, I hate feeling emotions that are not either laughing or being scared. I hate feeling emotions. I'm kidding. But it did make me feel something because I've been there. And I feel her pain and her heartache. And she just wants her brother to get better. And it's just not going to happen. And while she's dealing with this, she sees the BitNet lady again in the fucking driveway. Or not driveway, but in the middle of the road while she's watching Luke shoot the fuck up in her car. And after that, she kind of panics a little bit and flushes all her meds. All of them. She just flushes them because she's convinced now she ain't crazy. Because her doctor and everybody else is trying to convince her she's crazy. But she knows it's the fucking house. She knows the BitNet lady's real. She knows what she knows. But nobody else knows what she knows. So after she gets done flushing her meds, she's talking to her doctor about, she's fine. She's taking her meds. She's good. Nothing out of the ordinary. She talks about the whole Luke thing, about taking Luke to... not about going to get drugs, but picking Luke up and seeing him. But after that, we then cut to her hanging out with Theo in her bedroom, and they're supposed to be hanging out, but she wants Theo there to see if she can't sense Arthur. And this is where the fight comes in at. Why Theo was not on speaking terms with Nellie. And it's because she made or tried to make Theo touch the spot where Arthur died. And again, you're not supposed to do that with someone with sensitive powers like that, because touching the dead, as we'll find out what happened when she touched Nellie in episode 6, it's never a good thing. It's not good. And it's not good for Nellie to have to see this or deal with this. And not good for Theo to have to deal with this. But they get into an argument about it. And basically, words are said back and forth. Things were said that weren't meant. Mainly from Nellie about, how she's fucked up. How dare she want to talk to Shirley about this, because she told Nellie, why don't you come move closer to me and Cheryl? Steve's here, but Steve's on a book tour all the fucking time. And she's like, oh, yeah, big words coming from you who lives in her fucking guest house, who took the blood money from Steve, and, wait till she finds out about that. And she's like, that's real smooth. That's real nice. That's great. Wonderful. And she leaves it at that. And she refused to talk to her sister ever again. And all Theo wanted was an apology, and now she's never gonna fucking get that. That's more to add on Theo's guilty conscience than anything else. So, after, that doesn't fucking work, and they argue, and she lashes out. She then lashes out at Steven. Steven's on a book tour somewhere. She goes and visits him, and she calls him out. She's just like, Steven, you say all this stuff. You say you write this and that, but you don't believe in any of this. You don't believe in the ghost, but you don't mind writing about it when I tell you about it. But when I tell you about it, you tell me it's a delusion. It's fake. It ain't real. It's my imagination. She lays it on Steven. And Steven, again, God bless this kid, or man, I should say now, gets upset because he's embarrassing her at his job. And he basically tells her not to fucking do that ever again. And that she needs help. And she's like, I don't need help. I know what's going on. I see what's going on. And he's just like, oh, it's just another phase from you. It's just another fucking phase. You know, I've seen the Christian phase, the New Age phase, the Stone Age. Like, I've seen it all. I've seen it all from you, and I just don't care anymore. So, fucking, you know, after embarrassing the shit out of Steven, and she lashes out and everything, she goes back and meets up with her doctor, and her doctor, you know, proceeds to tell her maybe confronting Steven like that was not very helpful. You know, maybe it wasn't very constructive criticism. And she's just like, I don't care. It felt good. It felt good. It felt right. And he points out the fact that it has nothing to do with confronting your siblings. It has everything to do with the fact that you can't confront your past, and it all boils down to the fucking house, which you gotta let go. But she ain't gonna let that go. She ain't gonna let that go. So she books a ticket and goes to where the house is at. I think it's in Boston. And we get a scene where she drives up to this motel. Now, conveniently, I want to say this is the same hotel her dad took them at when they fled the house on that final night. But while she's there, she's got this watch in her hand. We pan over to her shoulder, out the window, and we see a flashback of Hugh pulling up in the motel with the kids and telling them, hey, I need y'all to stay here. I gotta go back for mom, blah, blah, blah. I'll be right back. And he leaves. And all the kids start talking about what they saw. And, you know, of course, they go, Steven, you're the last one out. What'd you see? I don't know. Somebody was hurt. What did you see? Well, I don't know. I think mom was injured. Theo, what did you see? I don't even fucking know. That's literally what she said. She doesn't even know what she saw. But they all talk about that, and then they make mention of the fact that the kids, or at least Luke and Nellie, make mention that they were in the red room. And they're like, that's impossible. No one can get into that room. And before we could, you know, get any more information that, we cut back to Nellie sitting on this bed, and she does the little 7 counter thing that Luke showed her. But instead of doing 7, she does 8, because the 8th one's for Arthur. Which is not said, but a lot of things are spoken or not being said in this show. So after that, she goes and lays down, and she has a nightmare of Luke. And Luke's on the ceiling, blood coming out of his fucking eyeballs. He's foaming at the mouth. He's got a fucking needle in his arm with a puddle of blood and shit, and he looks dead as hell. And she wakes up from that, and this is where we come in through the first episode where she's making all the phone calls, where she's calling everybody about, hey, something's up with Luke. This was the something's up with Luke. She saw a vision of Luke's dead body. So that's why she wants to get everybody to at least go check on Luke. So she goes to get something to drink after making all the phone calls. And as she's making her way back, she sees the Bitnate lady again. So this is why when we originally cut back from Steven calling her, we see her running in out of breath. That's why. She saw the Bitnate lady in the motel. So after the Bitnate lady situation, we get another flashback back at the motel of later on that day, where Hugh comes back. Everybody's asleep but Nellie. But Hugh comes back and he's covered in blood. I mean, like, majority of his shirt's bloody, his hands are bloody, half his pants are bloody. He's just covered in blood. And he sits down, he's talking to Nellie about everything. He's just like, you've had a rough night, why don't you go to sleep? She goes, I can't sleep, you know, Daddy, what's going on, where's Mommy? And he's just like, it's over now. It's over. And then the police come up, and he goes to talk to the police, and he tells her, hey, listen, I'll be back, but Aunt Janet's gonna come be here at 2 p.m. And she's like, no, Daddy, don't leave, you know, why are you doing this, you know? And he gives her the pocket watch, and he's like, when the big hand is here and the little hand's here, that is when Aunt Janet, and that is when we could be reunited again. So that's why she's got the pocket watch. Her dad gave her that pocket watch to keep track of time. And she does this little thing where she double taps it, just kind of hits the face of the clock, which I've done that too. It's a nervous tick, but it's double hitting the face of the clock. So after that little flashback of learning where she got the watch at and everything, she zones out on this fucking bed. She woke up at 2 o'clock conveniently at this time. After having the dream about the watch and everything, and then seeing the BitNet lady, she zones the fuck out. And it's now nighttime. She has a conversation with herself going, I shouldn't have slept all day. I'm sure there's no harm in going in at night. Oh, there's harm, but she doesn't know that. So then she repeats that it's just a carcass in the woods. It's exactly what her doctor says. It's just a carcass in the woods. She goes. And again, we cut to her on the phone with Hugh going, Daddy, I'm seeing the BitNet lady again. We see the fucking lights. We get her version, or her side of the phone call, and her going to the house. Now, from this point on, the house is fucking mean. I am not gonna lie. This is the cruelest thing I ever seen a haunted house fucking do. Like, I've not seen some cruel shit from haunted houses. Like, haunted houses will go out their goddamn way to piss you off or to upset you. But this is just fucking cruel. So, Nellie walks into the house, right? It's immaculate. It's gorgeous. It's clean. It looks good. Like, the house looks like it's always been there. It looks like they're always there. And while she's walking, she sees a little version of Luke run across the stairs and run off, and then she sees the little version of Steven come in, and it's like, hey, where'd he go? And she's like, oh, he went that way. And then fucking Theo comes in. No, it's Hugh comes in going, hey, where you been at? Pumpkin, how are you? Is everything all right? And then Theo's like, oh, we were just having a tea party. It's all great. Well, Mom's looking for you. And he goes see Mom, and Mom's fucking writing on the wall. When the writing said, come home now? Mom's finishing with, welcome home now. So they end up talking a little bit, and she's like, Mom, I didn't do this. She's like, oh, I know, honey. I know you never did this. I love you. I love you more than anything else. Why don't you get ready for bed? Let me get you a nightgown. Get your, this pink nightgown that's all cute and silky and shit. They have conversation. Now, here's something I've noticed. The red, like I said, the red door is important, but it's not just the red door, it's the color red. Anytime somebody's in the red room, there's always something red in the red room. Like, rather obvious red, like fucking like red, blood red. And the mom in this situation is wearing a red robe. And we see her in this outfit a few times, but anytime we see her in this outfit, it's always inside the house. So I feel like this is the inside the house version of Olivia. Again, fucking with Nell. So after getting dressed and shit, she goes, we need to go downstairs. He goes, what? What's downstairs? They go downstairs, and there's fucking Steven there. They're all dressed in their wedding attire, by the way. The fucking bridesmaids and the best man outfits. And he's like, oh, darling, you look so beautiful. I'm sorry for what I said to you. And she goes over to fucking Theo. Theo, I'm sorry we had that fight. I love you. Goes to Shirley. Oh, I wish I would have believed you, but I do now. I love you. Fucking Luke's standing there. Because of you, I am now completely clean, and I do not need to do drugs anymore. I shit you not. It's literally what the house does. The house made her hear everything she always wanted to hear from her family. Everything she wanted to hear. The apologies, the I love yous, the fucking I'm clean. That's all she wanted to hear. And the house did that to her. The house did that. And I'm sorry, that's fucking mean. That's fucking mean because of what continues to happen. So, after she hears all these beautiful things from her family member, her dad saying he loves her, her mom saying she's perfect, Button, you're happy, I'm happy for you, and fucking Luke does his shit. Motherfucking Arthur's standing there in his wedding tux, and this is where we get to see what Nellie was seeing in the first episode. We see her dancing in the decaying ruins of the house. What she sees is her and Arthur dancing in the house. And I'm sorry, that's just mean. That's just fucking mean. The house is basically giving her everything she's ever wanted. Everything. Her husband, the support and love of her family, just everything she's lost is right there. And after he kisses her and he fades out, she sees Abigail, and her mom comes through with a cup of tea, and it's just like, come on, we're having a tea party, let's go upstairs. She goes all the way upstairs. She looks over the balcony, and there yet again it's Arthur standing there smiling. And she's got this noose in her hand, and she's sitting there. And it kind of disappears from her hand when she turns around to talk to her mom. And her mom gives her that necklace, that locket that she was so into. And she, puts it on. She's like, baby, this looks good. This, I'm glad you like it. She's like, mommy, I'm so glad I finally got it. And then it starts feeling weird. She's just sitting there, and it's like she's starting to realize the weight of this necklace is probably thicker and heavier than what she thought it was. And while she's, trying to, I guess, process everything, that's when we cut to her standing over the balcony edge with this noose around her neck. And she's like, mommy, and she turns around, and the fucking mom's standing there and goes, it's time to wake up, honey. And kisses her, and as she kisses her, that basically pushes her down the fucking balcony, and she hangs herself with such aggression that it fucks her neck up. And she's swaying back and forth, just how Olivia pictured it when she was talking to Hugh, when she was wearing the shawl and shit. That was the future for Nell. She saw Nell's future of her swaying on the body back and forth. Or her body swaying back and forth. And then we cut to one of the greatest, oh my fucking God moments. So we then, we stand there pandering for a minute of her swaying back and forth. Then we zoom in on her, and she's still alive. And she's like trying to process what's going on. And then we proceed to see her drop down to each moment we just witnessed with the BitNet lady. The BitNet lady at the motel, the BitNet lady outside of the car when Luke was shooting up, the BitNet lady in front of her bed, the BitNet lady over the sofa. She was seeing her fucking self. She was haunted by her own self. It's a fucking vicious cycle in this goddamn house. It fucking cycled back through to the point that she was so scared of her own death that she made it happen. That's manipulation at its finest coming from this goddamn house. That's why this house is mean. This house is cruel and vicious, and I hate this fucking house, but I love it at the same time. It is the greatest haunted house I ever known, next to the house in the Changeling. But this house is just so cruel that it did that. And it ends with her screaming after she realizes she is the BitNet lady. And that's the end of episode 5, guys. That's fucking the end of episode 5. That moment in episode 5 was just jaw-dropping to me. When I first saw that is when I knew I was hooked. I'm like, this ain't no normal ghost story here. It's got a weird aspect when you're inside the house. It's like a time paradox. And you'll notice this a lot more when we get to Olivia's chapter, which again, I think it's in chapter 9 or 10. We get Olivia's chapter, and we see more of the time manipulation the house does. And the house basically manipulated poor Nellie to fucking do this shit. All because she just wanted her mom. She just wanted Arthur. And again, guys, the house is just so fucking mean. So fucking mean. But that's what makes this house amazing, and this a good fucking show, and the writing great, and the acting great, and everything about this show is just fucking great. Now, I know I've gone about an hour over my usual schedule, but like I said, I wanted to do 5 episodes for the day, and then 5 episodes for next week. But, yeah, that was the first 5 episodes of The Haunting of Hill House, guys. I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought a couple of times. It's been kind of an aggravating day on the podcast. Mainly is because people won't leave me alone. Like, my roommates come in here like 12 times. I'm not even joking, like 12 times. The dog wouldn't stop whining in my ear. I have my brother who will not stop fucking texting me about nothing. It's literally about fucking nothing. I literally am looking at the fucking preview of the text, and it's literally about fucking nothing. But hopefully next week's a little bit better. Maybe if I hammered on a little bit more about how much I need my peace and quiet when I'm doing my podcast, maybe they might understand, but I highly fucking doubt it, because I haven't really changed much of my schedule when it comes to the podcast since December. And it's now almost the end of January. But story of my life, everybody. Story of my life. You can never get peace and quiet. But, yeah, we're going to go ahead and end the podcast here. I hope everybody who has watched is watching will watch. I hope you enjoy. I hope everybody has a fantastic and a wonderful night. And if you're watching this podcast on Spotify, Anchor, or wherever, please give this video a like, subscribe, and a follow, because you never know what fuck's just going to happen. Trust me, I never fucking know. Tomorrow on my gaming stream, we will be continuing on with the Quarry, with the Infected run that I am doing. And next week, we will continue on with The Haunting of Hill House, episodes 6 through 10, where we get to learn more about Hugh's perspective of the whole situation, Olivia's perspective, and then one of my favorite episodes, which is episode 6, which is called The Two Storms. It's a beautifully shot episode, and I cannot wait to talk about it. But that's a story for another day, so until then, my friends, y'all take care.